exploding too big to fail banks. Thrash out in the open. Liberals allowing it. Anti-colonial, anti-capitalist, indigenous-led organization is all that you have. So, yeah, it's an interesting weekend, interesting day. I didn't really go too much into any of those specific topics, so I kind of wanted to maybe like take a slightly closer look at these things that are happening now. I briefly mentioned that like the current moment feels a lot like 0809 and the one of the previous Silver Spoon games that I created called Terminus Machina that deals with topics that are very much relevant to this moment. And the Terminus and Neofeud world are kind of merging into one universe tentatively called the Silververse. And so yeah, this is actually that's not the one I want to get to. Maybe I'll go to my own thing I was posting earlier today. So in case you don't know what a too big to fail bank is, okay, just to I don't know where everybody is in this. Like I've been in this for a long time. I'm 40 years old, so and as I brought up, I have sometimes brought up on occasion on streams just offhandedly as a silver spook is wont to do. I brought up that I was investigating and educating myself on how to become a high frequency trading Goldman Sachs algorithm programmer. Basically, what that means is coding advanced software that would do automatic stock trades, buying, selling, shorting, etc. Wall Street activity at a firm like not necessarily Goldman Sachs specifically, but Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan, that are in the news recently today. But this was about a decade ago that I was considering that, or looking into what that would mean. And long story short, I never decided to do that, but then I did learn a lot of things while investigating it. And so I know most people, if you are like, even if you are millennial, you might not know these terms, but if you were trying to get a job, when I graduated basically in 08, which was like the worst year to graduate probably in history of years to graduate other than, 1929. I don't know. The economy was in abject, complete disarray, free fall. The financial system was literally exploding. Like hundreds of billions of dollars of these basically fraudulent, unrepayable mortgages had ridden the entire financial system, and all of these banks, all the biggest major banks, the Lehman Brothers, the Goldman Sachs, the AIGs, the all of them, European, American banks, all the Western banks certainly, and some of the others, but definitely American and Western banks were completely insolvent. They basically had, and there's a lot of financial wonkage in those words I'm just saying. So I don't know how much I want to go into all of that, but basically, the banks, when they make loans, they have to have assets, right? And I don't know. It's just such a deep topic. But basically, long story short is that the banks make loans based on the amount of capital they have ostensibly in their, supposedly in their, the physical capital that they have, or the dollars that they have in their possession, and then they loan out more money that they have, but on the basis that generally most people don't try to take the money out. Like, so if you have money in a bank account, right? If you have $3,000, or if you're the average millennial Gen Z, you have negative $200 in your bank account, right? So if you try to withdraw your, let's say you have $500 in your bank account. If you try to withdraw all 500 at one time, or let's say 5,000, right? If you try to withdraw 5,000 at one time, that would be like unusual, right? Usually people leave most of their money in, and especially on savings accounts, you have like more money in that account, and the bank's capital assets altogether, in normal times, right? Most of that money is just sitting there, and so the bank is like making loans, right? The whole financial system is just completely rotten in a lot of ways, and it's been bogus for 2,000 plus years since the Jubilees were canceled. But that's a longer story. Since oligarchic weaponization of debt was enabled thousands of years ago in the Western world. But if the banks lend out more money than they have, right? If the banks lend out, let's say, then that's what they call leverage. So, for example, like let's say American Savings Bank or Bank of America or something, right? Or Silicon Valley Bank, right? Has I'm just gonna throw out a random number, $3 billion of capital, right? They're $3 billion in their account. If they lend out $30 billion, right, worth of loans to, I don't know, some Dogecoin ripoff startup, or they lend $1 billion or $500 million to some Tesla spinoff that's gonna have electric cars powered by radioactive algae, that's gonna have like nuclear sustainable biofuel for cars. That sounds good, but maybe it's just a husk that is just a money laundering scheme for spoiled white dude bros into crypto, right? Or what doesn't matter what it is, right? In the 0809 housing crisis, there was people who were loaning out vast quantities of money for what's called no income, no jobs, no assets loans. Sometimes I talk about that on streams. I kind of just like blast through it really fast, but I'm gonna try to talk about it a little bit more since that's the topic right now. So a no income. So in the 05, 06, 07, 08, 09 era, subprime mortgages is basically subprime mortgages and no income ninja loans is what they were called. No income, no jobs, no assets. Basically means that people were getting, for example, a $1.5 million McMansion in Florida, right? So that's, imagine like a very fancy, like an 8-bedroom house, 2 floors, right? Like marble kitchen countertops, the most beautiful thing you could imagine, right? In Florida, right? Being sold for like $2 million, $3 million to a waitress who is making $7 an hour at Applebee's, right? Or a McDonald's employee making minimum wage, or, just not no shade to those people. I'm just saying, like, the amount of money that they're making is not enough to afford a $2 million house, which in a normal time, just to do some math, just some fun mortgage math for all of the young whippersnappers who don't want to do this. But I'm just telling you right now, if you have approximately every $100,000, what is it? No, every $100,000 in loan that you have, approximately, this is approximate, depends on interest rates, and is it zero interest? Is it is it adjustable rate? All that kind of financial jargon. But every $100,000 of loan you have is about $500 per month of mortgage payment. So, for example, if you have a $100,000 house, you're paying $500 a month. If you have a $200,000 house, you're paying $1,000 per month, right? So for people who are renters, right, what's your rent in San Francisco or New York or Spain, or because I know we have somebody from there, or Canada, right? What is the rent you're paying per month? Most people are probably renting that are watching this, I'm going to guess. So if you bought a $200,000 house, you'd be paying approximately $1,000 rent per month. If you bought a $300,000 house, you're paying $1,500 mortgage per month. If you bought $1 million house, right, that's $5,000 per month. If you're making, if you're Applebee's waitress, or if you are, just a Walmart, clerk, and you're making, $1,800 a month, there is no possible way, right? That's literally 2.5 times your entire salary is what you would need for $1 million house mortgage. There's no possible way you're gonna have that money. So the mortgage origination officers, right, at these banks like Silicon Valley Bank, or like Lehman Brothers, or like the regional banks and the local banks that were originating the loans and then selling it to Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, these large Wall Street mega banks. They're basically what the ninja no income, no jobs, no assets, or subprime mortgage basically mass industrial scale fraudulent crime. It's white collar crime is what it is. It's just like massive wealth stealing with very complicated methods. That's all it is ultimately. But if you originating so if somebody's saying, oh, you're making $1,800 a month, here's a $20,000 a month mortgage for a house, and it's a beautiful house. Now, if you're the waitress, you're going, oh wow, that's really awesome. I can just have this house, and they have no incentive to tell you, yeah, well, I mean, you can have the house, but And with subprime mortgages with zero down, no payments for like X years, uh, you basically there was no interest, and you wouldn't be having to pay anything for a year or more potentially. So if you're just a minimum wage employee, you're going, well, you're telling me you the local bank, you Goldman Sachs subsidiary, giant Wall Street bank subsidiary, you're telling me that I can have a massive house of my dreams with like palatial, literal palace-like columns. I can have like a great Gatsby house with like a 3,000 square foot swimming pool that comes with indoor racquetball courts, and I can have it. It's like, it's like Cinderella. I'm gonna elevate myself to the neo-feudal / capitalist palaces of the rich and famous. I'm gonna live like P. Diddy, or I don't know who was famous at the time. I'm gonna live like Taylor Swift. Whoa, wow, that's amazing. That's so it sounds too good to be true, but does it matter? They want you to take at the end of the day, it's not they're gonna be their problem. They're gonna blow the entire United States and global economy up with those mortgages, those loans that those banks are originating, right? So long story short, they make the loans, the mortgage officer gets a cut, right? The bank gets a cut, the lawyer, the real estate agents all get cuts. They get 3% per agent. So the buyer and the seller all get 3%. That's basically the Western economy for the last forever. It's just ultra hopped up fraudulent real estate, money changing with, and then taking advantage of imperialism to the rest of the global South, and then internally colonized people doing all the actual hard labor and making stuff. And then you have a handful of, financial marketeer lawyers and government officials. The government also takes a cut. So every time a property is bought and sold, right, in the housing market, the government officials, the government, the people that deal with the title, exchange, guarantees, all that shit. Right, that's most jobs in the West. That's like literally 85% of all debt goes straight into housing, or commercial real estate, or some kind of building or structure, and most of that is massively overpriced, right? And not worth like 10% of what they say it is. It's all broken garbage shit. It always has been, but not that homes are bad necessarily, although many of them are falling apart, but they're not worth $1 million, $2 million, right? For that. Even a very nice, large house is not worth $2, $3, $5 million that they were selling them for. But the medium-sized houses, like in Hawaii, you usually spend $1.2 million on a 2-bedroom next to the meth lab above the highway. Like, I bring that up, right? So long story short, the loans that they're making, people in finance, they call it the FIRE sector, finance, real estate. Was it finance? Finance, not investment. Goddamn, I can't remember. But finance, real estate, banking, just basically money changing. These people they're just like overseers of capitalist machinations. That's basically all it is, and it's just a bunch of useless BS job, zero sum froth that the top 40% of Westerners, mostly white, middle to upper middle class people, are bought off with. That's what, that's basically the people who show up for Charlottesville, and the people who, are, in the New York Times, and liberal and conservative. But the people who are like make up the bulk of the block that is bought off by Western capitalist imperialist hegemons, are the people that are employed by that: finance, insurance, real estate, marketing, corporate, the lawyering, there's a lot of back and forth with lawyers dealing with this property. Then there's the corporate sector that's kind of connected with that. The FANG, big business. Of course, there's the military industrial complex. It also has its own, sub branch of that. And military real estate is its own thing as well. There are people that are caught up in buying and selling of real estate and changing hands. I mean, all of that, right? Everybody who is involved in moving and selling of overpriced land that is being despoiled and destroyed and by the military. All of that. That's if you add up the military, you add up the overpriced that are now exploding, big techs, right? Like all the tech companies fired like tens of thousands of workers that are all vastly underwater. You add up, and then you add up the real estate, housing and commercial, like the buildings in New York City that everybody wasn't going to because you don't need offices when you can telecommute. You have these huge concert halls that are not being filled, especially during COVID. And a lot of this stuff is just there. As I like to say, skyscrapers are concrete, polarized glass, and steel girder physical bank vaults, and not because they have banks with cash in them. I mean, they're literally giant wealth storage and wealth plunder and escalation mechanisms for wealthy people, right, like Bloomberg, etc., to keep on having ever escalating property prices. In Britain, they call it the rentier class sometimes. London has been doing this for a long time, but really all the Western capitalist entities have always done this. Paris had Versailles is basically, that's all it is. The Romans had their own kind of versions of this, and then they also collected debts like 2,000 years ago. But they also, instead of rather than like necessarily like buying and selling houses, they basically extorted more and more in the form of taxes from the common population until they became so upset with the people in the metropole, the wealthy oligarchs at the center of Rome, right, in the Colosseums, in their champagne. Well, in that time they may have more just straight up wine, not as much champagne. That's more the French took. That was the French branch of neo-feudal / capitalist / colonialist excess. But long story short, the people who are benefiting the most are obviously the people at the closest to the center, where the loans and all of the debt, right, which is the debt and the borrowing and the debt and the banking is like the highest level of capitalism. They're the ones that like move the entire economy in directions and extort and weaponize their, especially when you have at the end of empires. At the end of Western imperialist capitalist empires, oftentimes you will have exploding currencies. Like, as I would like to bring up the Roman denarius, right, was they didn't have a currency that was taken off a gold standard like the United States dollar, and then it was turned into a fiat petrodollar circa 1970s, right? And they printed vast quantities. As much money has been printed in 1 year recently than all of the dollars printed for the last 200 plus years the United States has ever existed. Just as an example, France, at the end of its, right before the royalty were getting their heads cut off, there were multiple currencies died actually in France. The franc, and then there were other types of francs that went through a period of hyperinflation. Partly that was exacerbated by an Icelandic volcano that caused famine, but there was already vast gross inequality and extraction of resources and labor and wealth of the common people, right? The Les Miserables, right, of France. And then they printed as all this money that became increasingly worthless. So Jean Valjean and Hugh Jackman's character, right, in the movie Les Miserables, based on the story about that time, goes to prison for stealing bread for like many years for the crime of trying to support his family's basic needs, right? Just taking a slice of bread. I mean, it's very like poor families in the United States today who, especially if you're black and you nick a pint of milk to feed your children at a 7-Eleven in Oakland, then you're going to prison for 30 years, and you're going to do slave labor, just like Les Miserables, and just like Roman enslaved peoples would. In Rome, they just throw you. They use your slave body as entertainment. They feed you to the lions, and then they clap, and then some dynastic / capitalist / colonialist oligarch like a Caesar puts his thumb like this, and he goes like this, or he goes like that, depending on what he wants to see today, right? And in America, what they do is they go, thumbs up, you get to live. Thumbs down, you go into South China Sea to do proxy war, and then die in an explosion, or maybe in a rocket, your legs blown off with, with a Hummer that has no floor and no Kevlar. It's like thumbs up. Maybe you get to like live a day, and thumbs down, it's like, no, you're gonna go die in a war now. But anyways, so I'm kind of off the topic. Let's come back to the banking. So, too big to fail is what that means, right, is before I kind of went off on all these extra directions, it means capitalized by U.S. Congressman Stuart McKinney, blah 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 blah. It predated the naughties, but too big to fail. Silicon Valley Bank bailout mocks too big to fail. Wall Street bailout popularized the concept of the too big to fail bank. So basically, what it means is that these banks in the 2008 financial crisis, some banks were deemed systemic, meaning that they could not fail because they were systemically important, right? So if this bank failed, just as one example, Hank Paulson, who was the Treasury Secretary at the time under George W. Bush administration, said if we don't bail these banks out, there will be martial law, riots, and the collapse of the United States economy and the country within 2 weeks. He told that to the entire Senate and Congress. Not that the Senate and Congress have any legitimacy in the United States, but he was like, we have to do this, right? And he was the Treasury Secretary. He's also Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs is a very critical bank in the United States empire in the financial, the high priest of the weaponized debt, weaponized capital. Michael Hudson calls it, super imperialism, etc. But it doesn't really matter. What you need to know is that the Goldman Sachs and their alumni are in virtually every single United States presidential administration in their cabinet, right? Obama had Steve Mnuchin. He's also a Republican. So Steve Mnuchin's father was a Goldman Sachs made man. He's like a multi-generational dynastic banker. Steve Mnuchin famously did deals with Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris famously failed to prosecute him when she could have. He was a Republican, and so it would have made some hay for the Democrats to at least pretend like they were going to rein in Republicans who were, for example, taking millions of 50 to 70-year-old grandma's houses. Remember when all the houses were being raked up in mass robo foreclosures? Maybe you don't remember that because I don't know, people don't educate in the United States or in the West, so they don't know how their countries function. But I know how your country functions. And so millions of people's houses were basically just being stolen up, right? Because of 25-cent discrepancies. For example, you're making your mortgage payment, right? Like I told you, right? Pop quiz. You borrowed $600,000 for a house in, Pasadena, California. How much are you paying per month, right? $3,000 approximately, or $500 per hundred. Anyway, I know you don't want to do math right now, but it's also why the United States is falling apart because nobody has an education. 54% of the United States cannot read at a junior high level. 54% of adults can't read at a junior high level. So majority of the United States is illiterate. Not that the West has ever really been literate, but let's come back to that $500. So the $3,000 a month, right? Or let's say grandma, right? Let's just say Granny May. She was a nurse her whole life. Her husband was a doctor. Who knows, right? They have a house. They're still paying, I don't know, $1,500 a month, whatever it is, in California, Michigan. Take your pick. California, though, because One West was the Goldman Sachs banker Steve Mnuchin's organization. She was supposed to pay back, $1,500.50, right? Let's say. And it's a lot of times the mortgage is exact like that just because it's calculated with interest and it's all in fractions of a percent. And then you have, interest. And so the calculation is often like $1,500. Your monthly payment on that house will be $1,500 or $1,526.85, right? Just as a random number. So when Auntie May, right, in California is making out a check of $1,526.85, if she's like elderly, like the when she's writing the numbers down on the paper check that she's filling out, because this is old school, it's boomers, right? A lot of people pay in checks, especially with those large sums. So you're filling out your check to mail in for your monthly payment, and she accidentally mixes up the 8 and the 5 or something, right? So she puts $1,500 $86, and it's like 15 cents, or it's something it's basically it's negligible, and it's just a human error, right? And it could have been corrected easily, with a phone call and a few steps. It's not like she's missing her payment. So Steve Mnuchin, it's kind of elder abuse crossed with just straight up theft, mass industrial scale fraud and theft and crime that in China or in Vietnam you would go to prison for the rest of your life for. And people have gone to the prison for the rest of people who ran real estate scams, big tech companies, embezzlement, white collar crime in China. They lost their heads for stuff like this. But America, the West, they don't care. France, Britain, United States, Sweden, Norway, they don't give a shit. There's no law. There's no justice in these hellholes. So the cops are too busy beating up black and brown and poor people and extorting money from them to maintain capitalism and injustice. So Steve Mnuchin's organization took multi-millions of houses from just regular moms and pops and elderly people, or just people, but disproportionately elderly because they're more likely to make these mistakes. And based on these slight discrepancies, or just like you didn't file the form in triplicate, or just some tiny administrivia nothing problem, right? Oh, the paper clips, you didn't properly staple the forms together that you were supposed to staple together. So based on these tiny little discrepancies, Steve Mnuchin took millions of houses, auto foreclosed on them, and used and those houses were brought into these massive mega banks that were used as part of their assets, and then they made money renting these houses back out, or buying and selling collateralized debt obligations, basically like fraud schemes. Their securities, you go, the deeper you go into finance, the more it's worse than quantum mechanics. When you go into high finance, it's the most eldritch, and it will eat your soul when you see the way that the West and capitalism actually functions. It just doesn't make it doesn't make any sense, and it's all absolutely the most malicious things you can think of. That's why I didn't become a high frequency trading Goldman Sachs algorithm programmer. So based on these tiny discrepancies, long story short, Steve Mnuchin stole millions of people's houses. Kamala Harris at the time was the prosecutor who, as the California prosecutor, could have prosecuted him. As a Democrat, right? Kamala Harris, current vice president of the United States, could have prosecuted him, right? If there was some kind of semblance of a justice system at all, if there was anything but a genocidal, murderous crime den in the United Snakes of America. It's all snakes. It's all evil all the way up to the highest echelons. All the middle to the top, it's all nothing. It's just a bunch of gangsters. But if there was, even within a gangster, unjust, imperial nightmare, hellscape, fraudulent country like the United States, you could at least have Kamala performatively do some justice by prosecuting a Democrat, prosecuting a Republican. Now, she didn't do that, right? For the same reason why the Silicon Valley Bank, millionaire investor bros, right, with their Reddit meme stocks and their stonks and their game stonks and whatever the other NFT bullshit they were pulling. I got this company that's gonna sell testosteronator crypto coins that you can buy more testosterone to put inside of your CrossFit Joe Rogan pills, and then you can stick that inside of my idle clicker to win game that has all based on predatory microtransactions, and that's my entire business. It's basically a giant circle jerk of fail son of empire fraud, and then that stock was given a loan by Silicon Valley Bank, lots of them, because big tech replaced, crypto, and then big tech replaced subprime and the fraudulent real estate home loan, and the student loans were always there. Student loans are still part of that panoply of fraud that the West continues to pretend is some kind of basis for an economy, which it isn't. It's just high speed fraud that hurts everyone, including people who have homes, college students who can't get their debt forgiven, as well as all of the actual businesses who would like to produce some kind of functional tech, unlike Facebook, Twitter, and that Elon is too busy destroying $44 billion worth of something that could be useful. Uh, Elon was of course the poster child for that. Not the 20 teens in which the big tech were the number one investments, right? And the military, of course, is always involved in it, but it's not the military. The way that functions is the military-industrial complex, but they also are fraudulent, propped up, broken F-35s that don't fly, don't fire, and weapon systems that get captured by Russia. And even if they get captured by Russia, Russia's like, how come this missile launcher has all kind of broken and malfunctioning semiconductors in it? It doesn't even have semiconductors. This is a Patriot missile system that just says Patriot missile system on a giant cardboard tube that looks like it was 10 toilet paper rolls glued together. What the fuck is this toilet paper? And it's that's because the Patriot missile weapon system maker ran away with $10 billion worth of Patriot weapon system missile dollars appropriated by the United States federal government and the Senate and the Congress, who had all their palms greased. Anyways, every member of the Senate and the Congress is constantly and chronically committing massive beheading or life imprisonment levels of fraud if you were in China or some kind of base socialist country. Every person in the Senate, everyone, AOC included, insider trading is legal. So basically, you can have inside information you can know that Silicon Valley was going to go bust, a week in advance because of you're sitting on a committee on a Senate subcommittee or a congressional, group that has this information, and you can trade on that information. This is ostensibly there's a Securities and Exchange Commission. Ostensibly, there are financial regulators that are supposed to stop malfeasance and crime, and these are all laughable. There's never, as I said, the idea, the existence of the SEC, the FTC, the Financial Trade Commission, is to give American idiots, which is all of them, and Westerners and Europeans, which all are idiots, who are all of them, the idea that there's some kind of watchdogs watching the, keeping things, some semblance of just. There's some kind of people stopping criminals from just stealing everything you have, right? Including your entire 401k, right? Like my parents lost, and your parents probably lost. So this idea is that's why the federal government and people in suits and ties exist. They're all criminals that are there to fuck you over and the rest of this planet over to make as much money as they can. And then they have these beautiful, well-worded names like the Securities and Exchange Commission, and they have agencies like Moody's and Standard & Poor's that put stamps called AAA, which is very high quality, gold-plated, hyper secure, investment vehicles for your, doctor, nurse, construction worker, dentist, retirement, right? And the purpose of people in suits in the West is to give semblance to there being any legitimacy to the West. That's the point of suits, really. It's the point of, not just the suit itself, as well as everybody, the top 50% of 50 to 30% of middle to upper middle class people. Their entire existence is fraudulent, actually. There's no legitimate jobs. So I know this because I had to work for these fucking assholes. It's not a meritocracy, which is, I would argue meritocracy in terms of government, it's actually required as a possibly as a precursor to any kind of democracy, as well as to any kind of sane and ethical economic and political system, because the popularity contest elections and the completely undemocratic setup of any capitalist corporation, company, business, or entity it precludes there being justice or freedom and equality. But anyway, that's a deeper, longer discussion that I go on all the time. Let's focus on the banking stuff. So hundreds of billions of dollars of loans were made in 08 and 09, right? Trillions at the end of the day. Greece was a giant international international financial heist game, among others. Billions and billions of dollars. It kind of like the waitress who is not necessarily something. It's not really the waitress's fault that she took a $2 million loan that she could not afford, right? It's not just her fault, right? But it's, like a student, right, who is 18 years old and is told their entire life, right, by their parents, by society, get a college education, millennial child, and that is the gateway to a American dream, right? Get a college education, and and then your parents are like, I want you to go to college. You got to choose one, right? Like, most millennials are told. Majority of millennials and Gen Z are like have or are planning to go to college, right? Um, and that's fine. Education is not bad, right? But then the people, when you're getting your loan for college, right? What they don't tell you is, oh, by the way, this is going to be a huge amount of money, and by the way, we don't know whether you're going to be able to pay it back. By the way, and some of this is like, how do you know what the job market is going to be like in 4 years? Blah 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 blah. But long story short, it doesn't really matter, right? The student. And number one, there shouldn't be any student debt because all education should be universal and it should be high quality and all education should be free, like Hawaii had before any Western country had it. But we can't expect these backward people that came out of Europe to have any idea about how to run society at like an efficient and ethical level, unlike Native Hawaiians who had universal healthcare a century before any Western country attempted it, as well as universal free college. The Germans and the Nordics copied Hawaii, actually, and also they copied some Asian and indigenous areas. And Cuba. They still the quality of life is actually better in Cuba than any Nordic and any so-called SOCDEM Western country. When you add up all the people together, and the inequality is much less because Europe is just a fascist Nazi hole that has some national socialism. That's also called the Nazi Party for white people in Europe. Anyways, universal education, though, right, should be the case, and then there should be no student debt, period. But we don't have that, right? So students are told, hey, like I'll say, hey, Chris, you got to sign up for this college. You're going to get a computer science degree or something. And yeah, you're going to, it's going to be great. And you got to go to college because, you got to get an education. You got to get ahead, blah, 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 right? And that's fine. But then what they don't tell you, and what the banks will tell you is that every student, the Wells Fargos and the Bank of Americas, right? My brother was chased around by Wells Fargo with these Terminator, like the financial Terminator, cannot be bargained with, cannot be reasoned with, and absolutely will not stop until they literally chop your kidney out of your stomach and sell it for $50,000 of student debt. Or I know kidneys don't go for that much, but the United States has legalized taking human slaves and literally chopping organs out of people and selling them. So all the black market organ legging they're accusing China of, that's what the U.S. and the West do all the time. But that's normal Western projection, Western capitalist, racist, imperialist projection. But long story short, my brother was chased around by these mega banks for his debt. Luckily for me, I was in a position where actually I had like 1 year of debt. And then one of my family members helped pay. Like it wasn't because I made such a great financial decision, but one of my family members, who was very generous, was like, I'll pay the next few years of your just out of pocket. I'll pay it in cash. Your college education. It was cheaper too because I wasn't I went to the Evergreen State College, which is the place that did have it had the largest queer alliance. Evergreen Queer Alliance was the largest club there, and they were the place that Jordan Peterson loves to talk about because they have very strong left tendencies, let's say, and certainly queer, and they were very supportive of. They were the only college that formally came out with the majority of professors signing a document saying all the college professors are against the war in Iraq the day after 9/11. Like nobody, there was not even Berkeley, nobody said that. And then Evergreen got their entire funding cut. And then actually, that's part of why I left Evergreen, because the tuition doubled because the state of Washington, right, which the military-industrial complex, right, obviously, at the end of the day, runs everything in the United States, along with the high finance and big tech. They're all interconnected. Silicon Valley, San Francisco, Wall Street, D.C. And so the military-industrial complex said, you got to destroy Evergreen because we need to make these wars happen so we can have planetary American hegemony. Right, and so all three of the Romes of America can make mountains of money, and so they cut the state funding, and the tuition doubled, and I couldn't afford to go there the next year. And anyways, I haven't been there in a long time, but so my brother though was so I had debt from that, but then the next few years I didn't have debt because it was paid off. Luckily, and Holly and I have never gone into any debt since that. Fun fact that the top 0.001% won't tell you is that none of them have any debt. They don't take any debt out. So when they say, oh, you got to get a credit card, get a bike loan and then a car loan, motorbike loan and a home loan so you can build your credit. That is to lock the average plebeian, the serf like you, the so-called temporarily embarrassed millionaire, into this fraudulent idea that you will ever make enough, you will ever build wealth by getting into debt. No, the debt is there to enslave you and to lock you into working for Lockheed Martin, Goldman Sachs, some mega law firms, real estate firms, government, NGOs, and or private companies. That's the purpose of debt, is to maintain feudal fealty, right? That's what you're actually paying, is you're paying your fiefdom to your neo-feudal lord, right? Because if you attempt to do anything outside of the United States gainful employment sectors, finance, insurance, real estate, military, big tech, the legal sector, etc., right? Banking. If you ever try to do anything outside of the LinkedIn suit-wearing network, right? Like, I don't know, be a radical leftist, try to support Black Lives Matter, indigenous resistance. If you ever try to break out of that, you will be cut out of. Your $300,000 of student loans will not be repayable. Your $1.7 million mortgage in San Francisco that you owe, right? Pop quiz, $1.7 million. How much do you owe, right? How much do you owe per month? $8,500. Your $8,500 that you owe every month is not going to be repayable with your what kind of peanuts are you going to make, right? Twitch streaming. You're not Hassan. You can't buy a $3 million house. What are you going to do with your law degree? You can't do left. There's no money on the left. No, yeah, you can go work for PragerU. You can go work for Tucker Carlson's friends, make some money supporting fascism, but you're not going to make any money doing anything actually useful for the world, right? I mean, for the actual world, not useful for the 1% oligarchs that run the West. So when you go to college, when you get a mortgage, when you take a loan out on a car, or especially a new fancy car, you have to stay in the military, that giant toxic capitalist corporation. You are a knight or a lord or a lady, depending on how high you have escalated yourself within the neo-feudal capitalist colonialist ladder. You are locked in though, but if you try to get out, you will be beaten out. And then you'll have this mountain of debt on you. And you'll be socially ostracized. All of your friends and your family, all those people you like hanging out with and going to the fancy clubs, all those vacations, all the people that you associate with, all your friends, all your social network will evaporate, and all that time and energy that you've invested the last 30, 40 years of your life into will be destroyed. And so you see there is an investment that you put of your time and your energy and your life into that life that you have built. And part of it is the debt that you owe, and it's $10,000, $15,000 a month, right? $5,000, whatever it is per month. You're locked in at that level, right? That is the leash that your neo-feudal lord has on you. Or your capitalist boss has on you, right? Or your landlord or your giant mega bank that's right gonna steal the house out from under you when you pay $1,500 and 25 cents instead of $1,500 and 75 cents. The Goldman Sachs king is gonna rip that house out from under you, and then you're gonna be fucked. And then you're just gonna get mad, and then you're gonna do nothing because you're disconnected from all the actual people who you could have been organizing with for the last 40 years of your life. And now you're a Gen X or a boomer, right? And that's where most of them are. And a lot of millennials, but decreasingly so, because the deal has become more and more obvious to be a scam to us. Hopefully it's more obvious to Gen Z. As I said, don't get involved in it. If you can avoid getting involved in any of this thing I just said, don't do it. Okay, I am not, full disclosure, I am not a officially sanctioned financial advisor by any of these the accreditation giving agencies of the United States government. But so I mean, you can't take that as you can't take that as financial actionable advice. But I'm just, in a video game, if you join any of those organizations or you go deep into debt in a video game, that's what you're looking forward to. So that's another reason why the left doesn't get any headway in the United States. That's how the U.S. meets its military recruitment, as I like to bring up, is literally student debt, right? They literally said, Republicans, when they come out and say it out loud, because that's their game, right? Is they play to the mask off racist capitalists, imperialists. We're never going to forgive student debt in the United States because it's a very important tool to meet military recruitment targets. So they just, so just you need to know that before you get into that kind of debt. Now it can make it difficult to survive in a capitalist, neoliberal, neo-feudal hellscape like the United States, because some things, it's hard to get a house if you want to own one without debt. But think about it like this: 65% of the population, approximately, and decreasing, owns a house. Of those 65% in the United States that own a house, it's only like 20% that own it outright. That means they don't have any mortgage or they don't have no loan to pay back. So the majority of the United States, 80%, are literal serfs. Because if you have a mortgage on a house, you don't own anything. You have keys and you have a thing it's called a title to the house, but you don't actually own that house. The second that you stop, right, paying the $1,500, $3,000, $5,000 mortgage per month, the second you stop, right, the bank owns that. Now it is the bank's house. It's not your house, right? It's like Neofeud giving you, oh, here's a gold coin, and then it owns your soul. Like in that Miyazaki movie. That's the purpose of loan. The purpose of loans is to turn you into a slave to your debt. I was like, this is 2,500. This is why there were jubilees in Eastern, not necessarily perfect, but less fucked up, less usurious, less broken civilizations, like even in Babylon, before a certain point. Every 50 years, there was a jubilee. It's even in the Bible, right? And so every 50 years, all debts are forgiven because it was recognized that vast accumulations of wealth and the debts and the slavery that could result. Basically, people that were chained, and sometimes they were not necessarily in chains like a chattel slave in American South, but sometimes they were, like a black slave in American. In the America still has black slavery. It's called the prison industrial complex, but they weren't. But people were mass exploited and chained to oligarchies in places like Greece, Athens, Rome, the Mediterranean, civilizations. I will call them all barbarisms, but in other parts of the Eurasian landmass, there were like in the Book of Hammurabi, it's like literally written in stone that you must forgive the debts, because this creates this mass systemic societal injustice that is damaging and can cause violence. It causes suffering. It causes malaise at the top, and it causes malaise in the wealth who become useless and they don't work. The people in the capitals that own all the capital and then lend it out, and the people at the bottom are overworked and tired, and so nobody and it's unjust at its root, and so the entire society is filled with just suffering and lack of efficiency and just unethical, immoral. It rots the human soul on a collective level, that's the West. It's a rotten soul. It's like the decrepit corpse where something good used to be, but that's like thousands of years old because they've never undone that system. So this didn't exist in Native Hawaiian culture for thousands of years. It didn't exist in indigenous Anishinaabe, Sioux, Lakota, Blackfoot culture for thousands of years. And that's a part of the reason why people are drawn, even Western Americans are drawn to indigenous cultures a lot of the time, is because they recognize that there's something deeply, deeply, deeply systemically, like soul deep, like the not necessarily like in their the psychological, social, familial, civilizational reality is just rotten. They know this, and this is why there's so much self-hate. I would argue this is why serial killer and people love zombie apocalypse and dystopias and collapse of society shows. That's why they love The Last of Us, because Westerners hate. They know that they have at the heart of it, right? They call it humanity is terrible and we should all die, right? And it's like anti-natalist, but really it should be correct. You should not throw all of humanity under the bus, because some peoples, not because they're necessarily genetically better, it's just they didn't evolve, and the history did not dialectically form in and move in that direction and result in those systems that have resulted in Mediterranean cultures, and especially the Euro and especially Western European cultures. But I mean, all of Europe has a lot of this problem. And not just them, of course, Japan and lots of cultures have had different levels of this. But long story short, when you have vast quantities of of capital accumulation, and then the debt, right? That entraps people, right? Then you have there's many other problems of capitalism. Markets themselves have their own problems. So you don't want markets, housing and food and health markets, right? That's another problem. But there's another one, which is this entrenched oligarchic, where they class of people, a tiny minority that are able to manipulate entire civilizations and societies, right? And then to the detriment of everyone else. And that's a major difference between a lot of Asian, a lot of African, and a lot of Pacific and Turtle Island civilizations. And in particular, right, it's really the ones who have excelled at these kind of really very messed up civilizations are places like Britain, France, Italy, especially Rome, the Roman era, Spain, and a lot of them are the most violent and most virulent colonizers. Spanish Empire, British Empire, French. Anyways, so and it's not to say that you're just because you have a financial oligarchy, you're guaranteed to become an empire. Not necessarily so, but each one of these, like, just because you have a healthcare market, privatized healthcare market, doesn't necessitate that you're going to have a hyper entrenched financial oligarchy, but they tend to come together because the accumulated capital at the top and the injustices that percolate through the society, right? The unjust hierarchical feudal blood dynastic, right? Race-based, gender-based, as we were talking about yesterday, sexual orientation and LGBTQ plus hierarchies, as well as financial hierarchies, right? Of multiple kinds, capitalist people being brainwashed through capitalist ideology, people being brainwashed into the necessity of banks, and these, especially investment banks, being headquartered. Every one of these, they work together to reinforce each other. And so, that's what it is. It is what it is. But anyways, let's get back onto the topic. So the banking sector in the United States lent out, as I said, hundreds of billions of dollars of these subprime mortgages, among other things. Muni bonds, or municipal bonds, basically means the is a loan to a county. For example, Pennsylvania, East Palestine, Ohio, New York City, to maintain infrastructure, like, I don't know, rail. I mean, well, that's, privatized rail that itself is a whole problem. But let's just say roads in Michigan. Let's say sewer. Let's say water mains in Flint. Let's say water mains in Honolulu, Hawaii, where I'm from, where the water is toxic with lead, even before the jet fuel was dumped in by the U.S. military. Municipal bonds are loans made by large Wall Street entities, large mega banks that are given, or they're made to, right, generally, just disproportionately impoverished, disproportionately black, but it's really everywhere, right? Municipalities, cities, towns, right, that is supposed to be to pay for the maintenance of the roads. The Build Back Better plan, where the roads that are falling apart, the bridges that are collapsing, the rail infrastructure that's obviously falling apart, causing mass vinyl chloride toxic spills that are turning the water into hydrochloric acid, and etc. Camp Lejeune level toxification is everywhere, all that kind of stuff. So the infrastructure, the basic roads, streets, bridges, sewer, water, buildings and such, that governments are supposed to maintain, we're given huge, at the same time as subprime, we're given huge giant bank, like subprime municipal bonds. These bonds were tailored to basically cause the assets of cities to be bought up by the mega banks, who then didn't maintain them or have the incentive to collect on the debts by governments in the United States, not the federal, but by the state and local governments, while no infrastructure is getting built, right? It's very similar to what Goldman Sachs and Western banking system did to Greece, which was make these fraudulent loans. Like as I said, like Greece is like an entire country like the waitress who was told, "Oh yeah, you can have this $50 million house with your $7 an hour wage," which is never gonna happen. And the Greek, now this is not Europeans. And Monogatake could probably speak to this, right? Europeans, like especially Germans and Austrians, the Northern Europeans, like to, in a very prejudicial and unfair way, like thumb their nose down at the Southern European basket case economies. They're living beyond their means. They're fat, lazy Greeks. They just spend too much money, and they just on their beach all day. They're a bunch of bums, and they should have gotten their pocketbooks in order. But the reality is, the Greek oligarchs, the people, like, it'd be like blaming all of the native Hawaiians for the U.S. military occupation, and it's like blaming like me for Red Hill. I mean, like, I fucking tried to stop it, and I'm like against it. It's poisoning me. I didn't want the United States military to build. Now there are Hawaiians who are complicit, who would join the U.S. military. You should quit if you are one, because you're fighting for the empire that's killing us all and killing the world. But in Greece, the people didn't necessarily want, to have a subprime country. The whole country was given tens and hundreds of billions of dollars. I forget the exact number. It's like tens and tens, possibly $100 billion of money lent to them based on their to push them into the EU. So this also had a U.S. empire strategic angle to it. The U.S. is involved in everything. Never kid yourself about this. The EU is just a puppet of the United States. There's no democracy in Europe. That's why a Greek like Yanis Varoufakis, a Marxist left Greek economist, has to start organizations like DiEM25 because there's no democracy in Europe, or Greece. And he knows this. But I just listening to him kind of get bummed out the other day and we're like, we failed. There's fascism all over Europe, and there's liberal fascism and just fascist fascism all over the goddamn place. The Greeks were not consulted necessarily on all of that. They were not even told the details. They just said, you're going to get this no income, no jobs, or low income, low jobs, low assets, huge loan to make the Greek economy look like it is at the level of a Germany, or at the level of in terms of production and what it has and what it's capable of. We're going to give you all this money. The Greek bankers, the Greek government at the time, who were in collaboration, the corrupt politicians that were in collaboration with the Goldman Sachs and the United States federal government, got millions of dollars of sweetheart deals and kickbacks for themselves. Got, Lebanon, this also happened. Lots of all over the world, right? $167 million is what fell out of a briefcase on the tarmac in Kabul as the United States was withdrawing from Afghanistan, a couple of years ago, right? So his last name was Ghani, the guy who was trained at the Ivy League bank, friends of Larry Summers. I forget the exact guy's full name, but long story short, every country has its sellout class that makes that country not democratic, right? Every country in the world, with the exception of very few exceptions, right? Very few. You can tell because they're all the enemies of the United States. They're enemies of freedom. Those are the only countries that have not been, and even those countries, the U.S. is constantly, its empire and its financial tentacles are, especially Goldman Sachs. I think at one point, more than half of the countries of Europe had a Goldman Sachs alumni banker as a technocrat in managing their financial and economic system. Mario Draghi was in Italy, is his specific name. In Greece, you asked me how I know this because I was going to be somebody who was doing this. Mario Draghi was a technocrat managing Italy's economy. Greece had their own Goldman Sachs alumni technocrat. Matt Taibbi, who's all over the news now, he actually did some, less questionable reporting back in the day. Every Europe is just a little marionette of the United States at the end of the day. And now they're all going to die because they're fighting America's wars, propping up their Nazis so that they can be the fascists that fight be the fascists that maintain the U.S. empire, fighting Russians yet again. It's very sad. It's too bad. I wish there was democracy in Europe. I wish there was. I fear for Monogatake. You know what I'm saying? And not just because he's a Patreon supporter, because that's just fucked up. That is sad that this shit is happening. So Greece was a subprime country with a massive unpayable sovereign debt, right? Like like a waitress, like a $10 an hour wage earner in California or Florida or anywhere in the United States, right? Who took a multi-million-dollar loan, right? 3 years later, when the subprime, no income, no jobs, no assets clauses run out, right? Where you don't have to pay any money, right? It sounds good. For the first 3 years, you're not paying anything and you get this mansion. I mean, it's kind of a good deal. Think about it, right? I mean, and they don't really tell you, oh, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, a year from now, they you're just an American. Like I said, 54% of America can't fucking read a book. 54% of America couldn't read the plagiarized American Constitution if they wanted to. And if you read the Constitution, you might get stupider because you think that Thomas Jefferson was some kind of like beacon of freedom, rights, and human rights and democracy, rather than a 260 slave-owning child rapist, plagiarist, liar, cheater, stealer, murderer, right? Which is who all the American presidents have been, basically. So the waitress in Florida is not going to think about what happens in 3 years. And that's to the benefit of the bank that's making the loan. Now, when the bank in Florida, that's the mortgage origination officer, that's a technical term for the person who like goes through the paperwork, does the background check, ostensibly does the credit check, but that's the point of a subprime loan. We're not going to check how much you make. We're not going to check if you have defaulted on an auto loan before. We don't give a shit. We're not gonna ask any questions, right? It's like don't ask, don't tell. But it's like don't. We're not gonna investigate, and we're just gonna give you this loan because out of the kindness of our heart. No, it's out of the darkness of our heart of darkness that we live in, called the United States, where we make as much money blowing up the rest of the economy and pissing in the planetary and certainly the countrywide pool. Countrywide is also a piss swamp. Any Western company, any Western corporation is one. So, sorry, there's a lot of levels of puns going on, but the point is that like when these mortgages were originated, and when all of Greece's sovereign debt was created, over the long term, the Goldman Sachs, the American lenders, the European Union that participated in all this fraud, right? All of the undemocratic, unelected bureaucrats in Brussels, which is what runs the EU, right? That tell people like Yanis Varoufakis, democratic election. Syriza was the left party, if I'm not mistaken, at the time, right? In the about a decade ago, that Yanis was a part of, as a Greek finance minister, and he went to Brussels and they said. And he was like, well, we don't want to just have austerity. Like, we please, like, let us forgive some of these, let us work out a way where Greece can build an actual economic base up, because they were in horrible shambles, right? 10 years later, after the finagling, 10 years after the McMansion loan at a country scale, the sovereign debt that Goldman Sachs, worked with plutocratic, corrupt shitheads in the Greek government, right? Who again, the part of that is, this is all very Western, because if you cared about Greece and all the people and its future and your own children even, right, you wouldn't do that. But the West is premised upon individual selfish profit, individual happiness, right? Individual pursuit of your own selfish desires and your so-called transcendental self-actualization, all this bullshit, right? It's basically being a selfish asshole. That's what it is. And so the selfish Greek politicians, selfish Greek bankers, selfish American bankers, and selfish European so-called representatives in Brussels all got together, made a lot of money for themselves, and basically destroyed Greece, destroyed a lot of the European system and economy that they could have had running, and also the United States destroyed itself and all of its homeowners and all of its economy in the 08-09 global financial meltdown that caused mass collapses across the board. I don't know if you remember that, maybe you don't, because there's no education system in the West, but try my best, on this, silverspooksfreeeducation.com, Silverspook University. But so when it blew up, the time in which it blows up, this is very important, right? Well, Silverspook, why somebody could just stop those mortgage originators from making those loans to those $10 an hour waitresses and McDonald's employees and janitors and etc. And it's like somebody could, right? Theoretically, somebody could. In China, they do. In Cuba, they stop it. In Vietnam, China very closely monitors everything the United States does because China is already surpassing the United States in economy. It's already a world leader in technology and total wealth. It's already surpassing the United States. So they're like trying to not make the United States mistakes. That's why they hire ex-Wall Street top brass like Michael Hudson to come teach China what not to do to not destroy themselves, because the Chinese people and the government actually care about the country. I mean, socialism with Chinese characteristics, history of Marxist strong left change, history of colonialism, being the colonized, and the history of being the colonizer makes a big difference to all of this as well, because the orientation from which the Chinese people approach, and the Vietnamese people and the Cuban people approach their society, they have a very different historical experience. America is just used to ripping and killing and genociding and being selfish dickhead fuckers and getting away with it. Whereas, a lot of Asian, the rest of the world has an experience of getting fucked. And now they're like, now that we're in a position where after a century of humiliation and then building ourselves back up with our, socialism with Chinese characteristics, all the revolutions, we don't want to make these mistakes, because now China is in the position where they could make mistakes, where they could gravitate towards selfish individualism. And there are liberal elements all over Vietnam and in China, and they know that, but they have governments and try their best with their people and their government together in a dialectical way to prevent the most disastrous, feudal capital colonial debt. Just what Michael Hudson wrote, Super Imperialism, while in China, in fact, right? Because he was describing the history of the West and the mistakes to not repeat. And that's why they have very strict controls about what kind of loans can be made there. When Evergrande, like just as an example, when Evergrande went bust, right, it was a huge real estate firm. Hundreds and hundreds of executives and bankers and highly paid accountants and lawyers went to prison. And you go, well, that's carceral. And it's like, ideally, we wouldn't have to do that kind of thing. Maybe in a society when we don't have fucking giant capitalist racist empires trying to destroy everything, the Chinese and the Cubans and the Vietnamese wouldn't have to do these sorts of things. But the thing is, even in Bolivia, right, Janine Áñez literally was backed by the United States as a right-wing financial neoliberal country destroyer, very much like the Greek government in the noughties, right? Before Syriza, before the Greek financial meltdown, kind of coterminous with the 0809 global meltdown. In Bolivia, Áñez she literally massacred dozens of indigenous socialists in the street with literal goose-stepping Nazis who were descendants of the Third Reich who moved into South America. The people that Magneto is always trying to hunt down and kill in those X-Men movies. So those people, those Nazis in South America, allied with the United States and the U.S. back. Elon said we will coup whoever we want. These are the coup enactors, right? And she went to prison after the country got together and overthrew with a massive general strike led by indigenous socialism, the MAS party of Bolivia. And then she was put in prison, but because she had literally killed people. But the thing is, she actually got they actually were very, for somebody who massacred, just slaughtered dozens and dozens, like 60 plus people, she ordered them to be executed in the streets. Imagine if a mayor, not that the United States has anybody who doesn't deserve to go to prison for life, but that runs any government at any level, but or any company. But imagine if an American president ordered, said, execute as many water protectors, not water hoses, not sicking attack dogs on indigenous Lakota people, which is terrible, right? Imagine if an American president ordered the mass execution of indigenous Sioux or Lakota people during a water protector action. Just like take out AK-47s. Imagine if the U.S. president ordered the military to just start shooting live ammunition at indigenous people, right? That's basically what happened in Bolivia. And eventually they went. The Bolivian indigenous protesters, they had to figure out something else to do, and which is what they did, and then they overthrew the entire coup government. Imagine what kind of horror. Anyway, so long story short, also the United States is not compared to Bolivia because the United States has no sizable there's no real actual left in the United States, unlike Bolivia. But after the coup government happened, they put Áñez in the left indigenous MAS party, led once by Evo, and now they have Luis Arce, who is also a Marxist economist and an indigenous person, in fact. Forget his exact nation, but they have multi indigenous nations in Bolivia. Very important factor, right? Again, that's very important. It's different from the United States, which is 98% settler colonial or identifies as Western. They identify as American settler colonizers, even if they don't say that out loud. They identify as that. Whereas Bolivia has 60% plus indigenous people that have an entire socialist. Again, like I said, for thousands of years, a totally different way of life to broken, racist, capitalist, imperialist, hierarchical, fear and terror and violence and disinformation-based lifeways and civilizations. So the Bolivians, when they got rid of the U.S. plant, Janine Áñez and her administration, she went to jail, but within a few years, she actually was given. They was very merciful. Right? They always say, "Oh, the communists are gonna slaughter everyone. Everyone goes to the wall, and they all get murdered by the squads of angry common thugs, and and everyone starves because they're eating rats, and the rice crops fail, and everyone starved in Cuba. 100 trillion people died from communism. All this bullshit, right? Far more people die from capitalism than communism ever. Anyways, so." Luna's grandfather was somebody who literally was a wealthy landlord, feudal, more privileged person. And then the Vietnamese Revolution, he lost his shirt and he was humiliated, but then he was forgiven and brought back in, as long as he didn't try to exploit and have unequal, unjust economic and social relations with the population. Luna's grandfather was made a member of the society again. Janine Áñez actually was given education, and she got her certification in sewing and working textiles and some actual useful job. I forget what it was, but she and it's kind of like, it's like amazing. It's actually like she literally was like a Hitler character. She ordered the executions of mass numbers of the people, right? You think if the Bolivian socialist left was so bloodthirsty, right? Unlike the French, I would even say, who cut off everybody's head in the revolution. It's very European. You just cut off people's heads and then you don't make any real changes. And then you have Napoleon, and now the richest person in the world is French. This is the big lie about France and its so-called democracy. They never had any. They just had a bunch of pissed off peasants who came out, cut people's heads off, and then the next person in line who stood up said, "I'm gonna be Macron's great great granddaddy," and then they ran empire for the rest of the foreseeable history. Right? What do they do? What is France doing in Africa? So this is the lie about Europe. There's never been any revolutions in Europe. Period. In Bolivia, though, after they overthrew and they had a real revolutionary mass general strike based, actually based communist socialist principled actions, right, including military actions, right? The head of the country, Áñez, she was put in prison and she was tried for her fucking massacres and her genocide. And then they said, well, you can choose to get some skills and do something other than be a puppet of the United States. Like, don't be a useless parasite war criminal like the majority of the United States, right? Like I said, 50% of everybody who works a bullshit job in finance, insurance, real estate, military, corporate, tech, big tech, you're all war criminals, right? Or you're complicit in evil and at minimum non-zero-sum game parasitic extortion of the rest of society with a job that doesn't actually need to exist, such as a finance, insurance, or real estate job. So Áñez was one of those people in South America whose job was to be the finance, insurance, and real estate. She was the real estate agent for Elon Musk, who wanted thousands of square kilometers of very lithium-rich, high-altitude altiplano fields, right? And she was like, Elon, you can build your factory here. I'll be your finance, insurance. I'll be your fire agent here, and I'm gonna kill all the indigenous socialists who wanna have the resources go to benefit the masses, and I will neo-feudalize Bolivia for you, Elon. That's what she said. She literally wrote that down. I'm not even joking. She has an open, like, it's not open, but there's letters that were discovered. She's like handwriting love letters to Elon, basically like verbally filleting him. I'm everything short of that. Like, literally, I will have sex with you, Elon. Come to Bolivia. I want to have your baby. Like all those dudes who go on Twitter and go, I want to suck you off, Elon, even though I'm a straight man, and it will be horrible for me, but I will give you the blowjob because I feel so bad that you're a men's rights activist incel and you haven't had sex for X number of months or forever. No, he has had sex before, but because he made all these children, but it's probably terrible sex. But Agnes said, "I will do everything for you. Just bring your lithium capitalist colonial factory reality here and give me a good cut of it." And long story short, Elon is a clown, just like the CIA and the United States Empire, and they couldn't get their coup stuck. And also because the global South is just too based and too efficient at kicking your ass. And so, especially Bolivia. And so then, it was undone. The coup was undone. Right, general strike happened. The administration was forced out. There was also a military component to that. The head of the Bolivian Air Force, who was an indigenous, it's either Quechua or Guarani person, but he's also the general of the Air Force of Bolivia. They have a military, right? Evo Morales was formerly part of the military. He's a paramilitary, but socialist left aligned, right? He directly fought goon squads and like corporate military brought in by Canada, right? Because Canada is involved in the United States, international resource plundering and killing indigenous people, right? That's why Justin Trudeau, smiles a lot because he's like, oh yeah, I eat indigenous, residential school children for breakfast. And then also he does that in South America. And so these American and Canadian corporations who were bring military to defend their South American colonial murder, bloody agricultural and resource extraction colonies. Evo was directly fighting them at one point. Anyway, long story short, they said Agnes almost got Evo Morales on a plane, almost captured him, and we're gonna basically hold him, torture him, do terrible things, possibly kill him. And the head of the left socialist aligned head of the Air Force called the Elon and U.S. backed Bolivian fascist coup and said, if Evo isn't on the tarmac on a plane into Mexico in the next 8 hours, all of your city will burn, right? So the Air Force is going to bomb. So there's a mini, not that hot civil war that actually went on there. It's like the United States is in a slow burn civil war at this moment, really, but people don't really realize it. But there was almost an internal military strike by portions of the Air Force, of the military that were aligned with the left. The United States is also split here. The United States has huge portions that are aligned with white supremacy, with white nationalism, with Tucker Carlson and Trump. And then there's other portions of the United States that we have more money if the United States fights a white supremacist civil war to try to reestablish, and we fight internally, Russia and China, we will lose the international imperial game, which is much more money to be made there, right? Then there's not much money to it. This is the thing, right? The United States is full of all these, people who want to make America white. America's always been a Nazi country. It inspired Hitler. But the people who actually are like the real Caesars and the British monarchs and the French capitalist Versailles, Bourbon King, the real managers who want to maintain actual really profitable empire, real power, they're like, this would not be efficient to maintaining what our empire is declining, but I mean, it's not efficient if we just let Trump mow down Black Lives Matter activists with live ammunition, like in Bolivia, right? Now they do it in Bolivia because they don't give a fuck about Bolivia, but inside of the United States, it would look bad to the rest of the world when they're trying to win a contest of who is the human rights, freedom, prosperous country to model, China or United States, right? You can't be having Nazis goose stepping down the White House, right? Like January 6th. You can't just have that and then have the rest of the world, which is majority non-white, and huge economies like Africa, Latin America, Asia coming online. They're not going to want to work with you if you have fucking swastikas all over your White House, people shitting on phones, and you have Donald Trump massacring black people in the street with live ammunition. And that's what Donald Trump wanted to do. He just couldn't get it done because the United States it is still split in half. It's not exactly in half, but it's in a cold civil war already. But long story short, that's off the topic. But back to the South Americans. Remember there was a coup of the Capitol by the right. They got into the White House. They took it over for a brief period of time, enabled by elements at all levels of the United States government: the military, Air Force, National Guard, Army, Marines, the federal government, state governments. They're all across the board. The United States is full to the brim of fascism. It's full of white supremacy. It is overrun with it. Right? It's just like the people who still have more money and power at the very top are like keeping them slightly, not barely. There's swastikas flying all over the streets this week, and nothing was done. You know, like in Charleston, where the Jews will not replace us was shouted, right? And then one of the left protesters was killed. This week, swastikas are flying all over the United States, and nobody did anything. So, and then the U.S. is just not talking about the fact that there are swastikas and people sig heiling. What they were called, the Brothers in Blood. There was like multiple organizations that were out just sig heiling swastikas everywhere, and at a drag show protest. And at one point, the police had to defend the Proud Boys had to be defended by the police from the further right. Nazi flag wavers, sig heiling the white blood people were calling the Proud Boys soft, weak, and the police actually had to defend Proud Boys from the ultra far right. So the United States, it's never had legitimacy, and now it just, but you're not gonna see that on mainstream television because that would look bad in a world that is, not being run by Western capitalists. Fail sons of the Roman Star Spangled Empire anymore. That's not good for if you're in the United States, though. You know what I'm saying? But if you're, you better watch out if the Russians show up in California, if the Russian ships dock, the Chinese and America's military can't compete with even the Chinese military that has, I was just reading a story about that. The majority of all the chemical propellants and explosives that go into American Patriot missile systems, rockets, Tomahawks, that material comes from China. The material to make the bombs and propellants for the javelins and the ballistic missiles that they ostensibly are going to shoot at Russia and China in some kind of unhinged future war they think they're going to fight, that all comes from China. All China got to do is don't send the gunpowder and the bomb components to America. And they can't make anything. Even if they could make it, it'll probably, all the missiles that they're going to be shooting in the South China Sea is probably going to crash in Norfolk Southern train derailment, halfway to the West Coast. So it's already like, it's mostly people in the United States, in Europe, especially black and indigenous people, and just people though, anybody, because fascism is going to hit everybody as it's coming to the United States and Canada and Europe. And so, that's, it is, and of course it's dangerous still. U.S. is, what's his name? What's his name? Mitch McConnell is trying to get get a bill passed so that the United States can invade Mexico, basically, use military force against Mexico, because it's Mexico is going, well, fuck this United States. We're gonna nationalize our resources and join the CELAC, South Central American alliance. Why the fuck are we gonna go with these Anglos, these gringos up there that are trying to extort and exploit us and weaponize us? We're not gonna, Mexico has a complicated history, but a lot of people down there, they're going, the winds are not in the United States' favor, and now the United States is trying to get a bill signed to invade Mexico. So it's anyway. But I'm way off my topic. I'm like way off my topic, and it's like 7:36. Okay. So finally, like, I think what I want to say with the Añez story is that there could be a system to regulate the financial crooks and the banking systems. People who work with Silicon Valley Bank, right? Who made these fraudulent investments, fraudulent loans, lost money on badly researched, badly thought out investments into some NFT Dogecoin by some idiot who got a degree from the Joe Rogan University and then a STEM degree from JordanPeterson.com, and a degree in Red Pill from 4chan University or wherever the fuck they got their education from. And those people who made those bad bets, who made those fraudulent loans, blew up. They're getting bailed out now, right? But again, it's really beyond Silicon Valley Bank. And could that have been stopped? Yeah, it could have been stopped, right? There's countries that don't allow these things, right? They're just not Western countries. They're not capitalist countries. They're not imperialist. They're not SOCDEM countries. The SOCDEM countries, they're not any better. They're all involved in this game. The SOCDEM countries are the makeup on the face of America, right? To make Western liberal capitalism, make the West and the Euro settler and Euro world look like it has any legitimacy. That's the point. But they're all involved in this. They have no legitimacy. They're all involved in all of America's wars. They're all involved in all of America's colonization in Africa. Germany is over there. German presidents are over there lecturing Namibians. The Swedish are over there, have and continue to commit war crimes in America's wars in Afghanistan. And so these there is no capacity in a bottom to top fraudulent society like these. And like what the solution is, at minimum is you're gonna have to, as I said, organize with the people that you can trust, the people that the Black, indigenous led. Again, it's like I said, like part of the reason why Bolivia is where it is, and not, let's say, I don't know, trying to think of another country that's a different demographic. Bolivia is where it was, rather than Brazil, right? Brazil is moving in a better direction, but Brazil has unfortunately had a very strong destruction and impoverishment and wrecking of a lot of the indigenous lifeways and knowledge and culture. Not because Brazil still has a large percentage of non-white, would be classified as non-white people there, but a lot of the lifeways and practices have been eradicated over the time. Not that they can't be recaptured and relearned, right? But Bolivia still had very strong, thriving, even though economically depressed, right? Colonized, suffering colonization, but Bolivia and Peru have 60% very strong surviving and now thriving indigenous, modern, socialist, technologically advanced, right? Economically rapidly developing, indigenous-led, culture and society. Whereas Brazil and some other countries in South America, they have a much more Euroized, very much whitened, and very much destroyed lifeways populations. Like Hawaii is another place where a lot of Hawaiians, unfortunately, we don't, for historical realities, Hawaii is majority non-white, but a lot of Hawaii, unfortunately, is still deeply diseducated, like for the reasons that I bring up all the time on these streams, by the United States. So our culture, Peru has like entire mass multi-million person communities that are have been disconnected from the colonial Cochabamba cities, Whereas Hawaii actually has a similar demographic and is 60% non-white. Hawaii's actually 75% non-white. But the Hawaiian history and culture has not been continued because of the, part of it is the island is that all of Hawaii is basically white capitalist city. And the Hawaiians have to kind of hide in their households. Whatever pockets of the Hawaiian culture and history that gets passed down is passed down in secret in Hawaiian households. Whereas in the Altiplano of Peru or Bolivia, the indigenous, communist, socialist, lifeways and culture, thick culture with the practices and their identity, their nations, right, of Quechua, Guarani, etc., that are similar to Native Hawaiian cultures, right? And they're fundamentally collectivist, communist, environmentally sustainable, etc. But they have existed more so separate from the white capitalist colonizer culture. There's a kind of colony here with 40% white, Spanish and now U.S. Satellite rulers, right? And then you have this mass of people, and also the mountains, which makes it more difficult for interaction to happen, right? And that's a lot. You look at the regions that have the most indigenous dance and very multicolored, multi-layered, non-European, right, non-colonizer clothing styles. It's often in the mountains, even in Spain, like in Monogatete here, in the Basque regions, right? In a lot of the areas, it's the very difficult to reach mountains where Rome, one of the original colonizers of the European landmass, and then also European colonizers around the world, they have not reached for various reasons, right? So the Peru and Bolivia's geography is part of that history, right? And so then you have very separate indigenous culture here, and then you have the white capitalist culture in the city. Just as an example, right? Jeanine Añez ran with a giant Bible saying, we the white Christian true Bolivians are going to push those satanic Pupukaka Indians back into the satanic jungle from whence they came. She literally said that, right? That's what she ran on, fascist, right? We're gonna wipe them out. We're gonna push the demons into the jungle, because there were Bolivians under Evo and the socialist, indigenous-led socialism. There were indigenous people in the cities with STEM jobs, with political science degrees. Again, right? Like Hawaii in the 1800s, right? They're very advanced. But all of a sudden, all the white capitalists who are used to just running their little colony, right, exploiting the workforce, destroying the environment, working with empires like the United States, and so, and they were upset that all these indigenous people were coming down from the mountains into their cities. So anyway, like, what am I saying? So then, that's part of the history. That is why doesn't determine. People make individually choices. Societies are, they're evolving and, moving, and they're not monoliths in different ways, and they can move in a lot of different, we can't predict, right? But that's part of the material and historical circumstances of that place, Peru and Bolivia, right? And that is part of the material and geographical history of the Basque region of Spain, which has some of the world's largest cooperative and socialist economic structures, like the Mondragon cooperative corporation, which has actual democratized workplaces at a scale beyond that of any European business. As far as I know, Italy, in parts of Italy, there's like high levels of cooperatives, but it's Mondragon is like basically one of the biggest, and it is not a mistake that that's the area that is a mountainous region that was difficult for the Romans to reach. Anyways, but that's okay. So back to finally, like, there is a way to do this, but it does require, listening to indigenous people who have a lot of, not all, but a lot of lifeways, culture, solutions, and identities to, not to say that you can become an indigenous person as a white American, but, allying with the oppressed peoples, right, at minimum, right, supporting the most oppressed peoples in a place. Now, America becomes very difficult because of the demographics. It does make it difficult, right? But part of it is people have to recognize that there is an extreme. You have to recognize the depths of depravity and hollowness and unsalvageability of entities like the United States and Canada, right? Not to say that they nothing could ever be made of it, because we can't say never, right? But the depths of wrongness, brokenness, certainly not fixable through Western representative democracy elections. But most Americans can't get past that one at this point. So that's already a threshold that you're gonna have to get past that one if you want to really have any change in the United States. Every time somebody, well, not to say don't vote, but when you think that you're gonna change anything in any significant way, through voting, you've already lost. There's no hope at that point. So the people, so if you would like to not have, this ongoing economic destruction by your tiny handful of CEO kings and banker emperors, right, that make too big to fail banks that swallow your roads and your infrastructure and your future, take your parents' retirements, their 401ks, and chop them in half like my parents in 0809, right? Based on this idea that, if you invest in the stock market, you take all of the eggs and stick it in the stock market and good things will happen. George Bush ran on, let's take Social Security out of the lockbox and put it into Wall Street. Right? Let's repeat the mistakes of the Roaring '20s and the Great Depression, and then after we make the mistakes and it blows up in 0809, it was a Great Depression. The total debt amounts was higher than the Great Depression. After everything blows up, unlike after 1929, after the Roaring '20s, when the stock market's unsustainable bubbles and vast quantities of misallocated wealth exploded, they actually had a Pecora Commission. They had the Securities and Exchange Act they actually put bankers and Wall Street criminals in prison. Nothing has happened in the United States, right? So the present is like already far worse than the Great Depression, in the sense of nothing has happened in 0809. Nothing continues to happen. Nobody who has actually orchestrated any of the crimes, the highest, most important, and most heinous financial crimes. All the Steve Mnuchins, all of the Goldman Sachs executives, all the big bankers, all the politicians that are all complicit in all of this, right? None of them right? If this was China, if this was an actual country, if this was Bolivia, if this was Cuba, all those people would be gone, just like Agnes, just like 15 billionaires who were executed in China for not even close to the levels of corruption the United States is in. But the United States, like Europe also, if Europe had a justice system anywhere in Brussels or Greece or Germany or Sweden or Spain or Italy or anywhere, Britain, the majority of the upper crust, the majority of the business executives and owners and politicians in Greece and every European country would all be removed from power at minimum, if not executed, if not in prison for the rest of their life, right? Being rehabilitated like Agnes, learning how to do something useful, right? Rather than running your mouth like Olaf Scholz and Merkel and the clown who's pretending to run Britain, I don't know, the paid fucking puppet who is chopping all their healthcare in half and telling immigrants you can go be a slave now. Rishi, I don't care to learn these people's names nowadays because it's too much. It's just a waste of my time. They're all going to be gone in the next 2 days anyway, once they get replaced by a more complicit puppet as the European continent falls into the ocean. So like Atlantis 2. So after Russian targeted intercontinental hypersonic strikes. So to get rid of all their Nazis that are all over Europe, like the United States and Canada. So the European, in a video game, obviously, the Russia, I'm not saying, this is full disclosure, no financial advice, nor bunker, nor intercontinental fallout shelter construction advice should be taken seriously in this stream. I'm not saying build a bunker against Russian missiles that are going to denazify you. If you're a Nazi, just die. Anyways, so just like Jane Fonda said, just Nazis. I mean, are we over here going Nazis have feelings though? What are we can't play Wolfenstein again? I remember in 2016 I wrote a whole article about that. But anyways, if there was some kind of justice system, then you could get this. Then there are countries that have justice systems, right? They're not colonizer countries though, all of them basically. They're not former colonizer countries. They are not Western countries. They're not white countries. They're not Euro or Euro settler colonies. They are countries that have liberated themselves from colonialism and capitalism and colonialism. Very important. And so you cannot repeat that in Europe because you're all colonizers. You can't repeat that in the United States because you're all settler colonizers, or you're mostly. But you do have, Black and indigenous and non-white peoples of significant number that that like the people, like the 60% of Peru and Bolivia, like the 99% indigenous Chinese and the 99% indigenous Vietnamese, right? And like the near 98 to 99% indigenous Africans in Africa who have suffered under colonialism have massive, potential. But inside the United States, it requires people, recognizing these problems, recognizing the problems that there's huge economic, amazingly, basically in the U.S.'s current form, basically unsalvageable levels of corruption and complicit people at every level, right? From academia, even all the way into all political, definitely in the finance and insurance and real estate, the military, all that, and then you got to recognize that, and then you have to go, what do we actually do about that, right? And it's unclear what exactly, but what without the organization, it's unclear where the United States is going right now. It's wobbling in a lot of directions at the same time. But at minimum, definitely organizing with those people that you can organize with, growing the food that you can grow, not just growing food but also like organizing some kind of economic production model. I mean, again, look at these other countries and then learn, right, from them. Organizing as I often say, non-capitalist, non-colonial, and anti-colonial businesses, whatever they are, right? It is part of the solution that every one of the countries that I've laid out has enacted, right? Now, they have a more immediate and imminent need to do them because of the level of exploitation that they are under. In the United States, part of their game is that it's not as extreme, right? In the same way that they don't come out and just massacre in the street 50 indigenous people like they do in Bolivia, right? But then that also makes people a little more not lazy, but kind of, like they don't feel the immediacy. It's like, well, as long as my food stamps come in, and as long as I kind of have this okay job with Lockheed Martin, and I mean the rent's going up, and that sucks. But I mean I'm not gonna do anything too crazy because I mean like it's not that bad. It's not that bad. It's kind of like it is kind of bad. I mean it could be worse. And also I'm white, so I'm not too worried about Nazis. I mean I'm white, so I mean. But it's like those people. Also, it's like I mean, just because you pass as that now doesn't mean that down the road they won't find some other way to say that you're a degenerate, like Nazis did, and that makes the complacency factor very high in U.S., Canada, all the Western countries, definitely Europe, which is full of fascists. To look at what the Europeans are saying about Africans in Ukraine as just one place. And look at the prison rates of Muslims in Germany, or Muslims and Africans in France, as another example, and that makes them complacent as well. Well, at least I'm not black. I'm a white Frenchman. So I'm just gonna go on. I'm gonna go and party in the street once a year in the general strike, and that's great. But I mean, and then after I get my pension raised, whatever, I'll let the billionaires run France, because the billionaires have always run France. If France is really radical, they wouldn't have any billionaires. But the richest man in the world is French. Arnaud Bertrand, he's CEO of LVMH. It's very important to remember, France is not that radical. France, they just have a history of going on the streets and acting up so that their white nationalists can have National Socialism, and then they put all the black and brown people in prison, and they complain about le wokisme. That's the number one topic. The France's fascist party is huge. Marie Le Pen almost won. All of Europe is a shit show. They have their head up their ass. If France had any kind of level of baseness, they would all the people of France would get their Macron to stop lecturing and colonizing Africa. But France doesn't have the capacity to make any moves, and they don't care. They don't care about Vietnam. Otherwise, Ho Chi Minh would have been working with the French people. But the French people don't give a fuck about anyone but themselves. So yeah, suck on that. They're one of the most snobbish white people. They look to the revolution, right? Like we're better than Britain because we cut the heads off the royalty. I mean, that's better than nothing. But now you have your head so far up your fucking ass. And you're full of fucking fascist French racists. So anyways, I have a particular one for them because they like to think of themselves as like much better. There are internationalist, actual anti-racist, anti-imperialist portions there, but that's not the majority. Otherwise, they wouldn't have the richest man in the world in their fucking country. They would have got rid of them like the Bolivians, the Cubans, and the Vietnamese and the Chinese. People would have heads would have been disconnected from their body. But the truth is, as long as white Frenchmen have what they want, they don't care about anyone else. They don't care. They cheer on when Asians and Iraqis die in the 10-mile stretch between Turkey and Greece. In fact, they go down there and they cheer it on because they don't want any more brown people in their Europe. So anyways, they got stuff they gotta negotiate, or they're gonna get denazified. So by Russian missiles and tanks. So okay, let's finish it up though, because it's already 8. Okay, so I kind of went way off on my topic. But too big to fail banks. But I mean, so when we talk about too big to fail banks that are exploding, and this fashion in the open, that's part of this. What's happening is because of the mass inequality. The fascists are brought out as a last weapon against the left by the liberals, by the capitalists, just some of these things I wanted to briefly talk about. Not just big tech, the entire U.S. economy. So because people are talking about these stocks of banks are crashing, which again, I told you, right? J.P. Morgan is right next to Goldman Sachs. J.P. Morgan was one of the largest financial entities in the United States. Now, I think Blackstone and BlackRock. There's a few larger ones now. They're kind of agglomerations of a lot of these other ones, but still, the Goldman Sachs, the JP Morgan, Citigroups, these are all of the prime criminals in the 0809 financial crisis, right? JP Morgan, these were all the massively over leveraged, right? These banks that again took hundreds of billions of dollars, right, of these fraudulent home loans, like I was talking about earlier, right? The $3,000, $10,000 a month payment for a waitress that's making $1,800 a month, right? That would never be repaid, right? And this is the last piece of that story, they took all of those debts, right? All of those millions of loans for houses all across the United States, repackaged them in regional banks into what's called a collateralized debt obligation. It's a fancy word that basically just means a giant toxic piss and shit vinegar and it's the equivalent of the inside of a Norfolk Southern train as a housing mortgage. Toxic garbage, right? All packaged together. The regional bank would then move it. Just an example, Silicon Valley Bank is a regional. I think it's technically a regional bank, so it's a mid-scale bank. The regional banks take all of those loans, repackaged toxic waste loans, right? That would never be paid back. They were going to blow up someday, and then sell all that packaged loans into a massive Wall Street bank like Goldman Sachs. The CEO of Goldman Sachs, Lloyd Blankfein himself, literally came out and said it out loud in like a congressional testimony. Oh yeah, we were lying and defrauding our investors. We basically took money right straight out of their accounts. So this is another. I mean, it's like, so you admitted to crime. And the thing is, if the United States federal government, regulators, Congress, they have all these public flagellation events where they kind of go like Elizabeth Warren used to come out, right, with Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and who's the other ones? Attack dogs, these defrauders, these people who feigned like there's some kind of legitimacy in the American government. Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Dennis Kucinich. He had a little more base stakes, but he is not going to do shit in the United States Congress. And they'll come out, and the bankers would come out on the Senate, congressional hearing, and they go, shame on you, Jamie. AOC did that, right? Shame on you, big banker. Oh, you did a bad thing. You took all this money and millions. You took all this money, Steve Mnuchin, from all of those mommies and grandmas and aunties, and you took their houses. Oh, you're terrible. Oh, I'm a big and tough United States congressperson. And then cut. Everyone's an actor. It's like, that's again, the purpose of any suit, politician or otherwise, is to you are a war criminal who gives legitimacy. The worst are the ones who do all of the pretend good stuff. The Republicans are at least more honest. They're like, yeah, we hate poor people, black people, brown people, want to maintain an empire. Fuck all these people. The Democrats are like, we really care about you. That's why I'm berating Jamie Dimon, CEO of JP Morgan. Again, in the 1930s, at least there was an actual trial of bankers, and they did put some of them in jail. Not without. It is important to bring up there was a massive, huge left upswing, and there's communists and huge socialist resentment and anger at organizations behind that. And it wasn't just like the lawyer was really good at. JP Morgan was the bank that was one of the banks the Wall Street criminals who was defrauding the entire society in the roaring 20s, right? And so there was a trial, and many of those bankers were brought out. They were lampooned. One of them was even tarred and feathered, and they had this three-ring circus with little people. Well, they called them the M word back then, and it was making fun of the rich and the bankers. It was a public spectacle for partially it's for mass consumption, but at the end of the day, a lot of the rich did actually get in trouble for this. And there was a New Deal that was made, but the New Deal was made under, again, more massive pressure from the masses. Different international and empire reality. America was not an empire at the scale that it was now, certainly not the collapsing one. And it was a different reality in that time in a lot of ways. The Russian Revolution that just happened, it was a different reality. And that doesn't, not to say that things couldn't happen now, but long story short, when the 08-09 financial collapse happened, bankers would come out, and Obama's job was just basically to make it all look like everything was fine. Look, there's a black president. Everyone go to sleep. He did an amazing job of burying the actual one of the greatest global heists and stealing of the entire future of America's college graduates. Everyone's retirements, 401ks, everything, all the houses, all the bankers were given trillions of dollars of free money in the TARP $800 billion bailout, and then subsequent Federal Reserve backed promises. So much money was directly just given to the people who had crashed the plane of the U.S. economic system for their benefit. So they made money crashing the plane, and after they crashed and blew the plane up, they got more money for crashing the plane. Nassim Taleb, who wrote The Black Swan, that was one of his famous, very apt analogies. Nassim Taleb is also a Lebanese person, so he's not a Western person technically, but he was hired as a quant in Wall Street. He also wrote a book about iatrogenics. I have a whole stream just about Eastern versus Western medicine and the non-scientific, non-empirical West that is all based on theories that are fraudulent to justify infinite plunder, including medical theories, right? So he brought up the fact that why are we all these Wall Street executives and all these banks they made all these fraudulent loans, caused all this instability, took all these collateralized debt obligations, repackaged them into these massive Wall Street derivatives products like credit default swaps, and the JP Morgans and the Goldman Sachs of the United States, which are of the Western capitalist world, really took all that toxic waste dump loans and then dumped it into every average American, firefighter, teacher, pension fund, retirement fund. My parents lost half of their entire life savings in that time. That's why they're working till they die, right? Everybody's just like, oh, that's just normal. When you're 90 years old, you're still limping around, driving an Uber to teach your underfunded public school, right? With getting COVID in it. When you're 90 years old, dying from COVID, right? When you're 90 years old, limping around, working in, remember all this, oh, look at all those 80-year-old boomers working in the Amazon factory. Oh, that's so great. Look at all of they're just doing ticket, but to Western Americans, I don't know, man. I don't know, man. These people, amazing. They're amazingly brainwashed. It's just they have no capacity for independent, rational, or any kind of self-worth. I don't know. I don't understand how these people work. But I should understand because I was raised in it, but I guess I can. It's just kind of you bullshit yourself, and then you eat the shit sandwich that your abusive, tyrannical, undemocratic rulers in your governments and your businesses and your homes, usually the white male father, give to you, and then you just ask for more, and then you punch down when you get too mad. When you get really mad, you just punch down. So the man punches his wife, and then the wife, punches, out at whoever they can, children if they can, father punch down. In the workplace, the bosses punch down at the father, and then at the workplace, the upper management punches, the whole government is punching everyone down, and the CEOs and the billionaires punch everyone, and they punch each other. And then sometimes it winds up in a lawsuit between Microsoft and Amazon for $10 billion worth of military contracts. Anyways, so the people who caused the crisis, nobody went to jail, nobody went to prison because there's no justice in the West, and certainly in the United States. They all got billions of more dollars, trillions of more dollars in some cases, for destroying the entire economy, causing a massive, it was a depression, right? Millions of people lost jobs, all that. You can go watch, lots of people have stories about this to learn about. There's that show, The Big Short, that's all about this, that stars, Anthony Bourdain's in it, Margot Robbie's in it, taking a bath so that it's more entertaining, because it can be kind of dry, obviously. But at the end of the day, nothing happened. And everyone is just supposed to just accept it and, continue with our day. It's kind of like, COVID, right? The COVID is another one. Everyone watched, right? Everyone watched the richest people in the world get 5 times richer, like Elon and the guy who owns this company, while everyone was losing their jobs and dying of COVID, and nothing was done. No care was given. Hospitals and nurses, everyone was being told all kind of wrong things about whether it was denied, it was blamed on China, it was and million plus people died. Millions and millions and millions and more, tens of millions more have long-term permanent disabilities. They can't think straight. You have permanent brain fog. One of my friends, Agent NDN, is over there I have aphasia. I can't recognize my own friends and family's faces, but I know that there's someone, because my brain is so damaged from COVID. And, everybody's been, and we're just supposed to move on and, keep calm and carry on and, get out there, get back to work and shop, everybody. Why is there a worker shortage, right? But that's the 0809 crisis was like that. It was okay, the richest people in the society completely owned the whole government, and I was already, before that I was radical, and then I was really radical in 0809 when Holly and I were fucking homeless. We had a 5-week-old baby. It was the Baby at Occupy Wall Street. It was Occupy Hawaii. It was de-Occupy Hawaii, but it was part of the Occupy Wall Street protest. I was like doing performance art with like blood all over my shirt with a banker hat, fucking handing out Monopoly money, being pissed off. I wrote songs about that entire era. I have almost an entire album. Terminus Machina is an entire video game I made about that entire era, and like, you know, that reality, you know, anyway, I showed that on screen, but I might at the very, oh, here it's right here, right? So this game that stock ticker with the drone strike in the collapsed American city due to financial malfeasance and fascists roving around, fighting over pork and beans with starving black and brown people and immigrants, that's all I Terminus Machina. But that's kind of like, well, if this happens again, it's gonna look more like that, right? If the United States financial jacked up house of cards, completely hollowed out economy explodes again, which it must because nothing was done, and every single one of those banks got zombified and propped up with previously unimaginable amounts of central bank printed money. Basically, that means the entity that creates the money out of thin air prints that money and it sticks it into all the people that have what's called have the positive side of financial apartheid, or the what the fuck is that? There's a name for that. It was on the Max Kaiser used to use it all the time before he became some crypto bro. The it's like a French word, but contiguous effect. No, it's the effect where basically those who have the closest proximity to the central bank have the best benefit because they have the least interest. They get zero interest. You know how you got to pay 5.4%? I don't know what you're paying now, right? The interest rates, you know, if you take out a loan out for a house, you're paying 4 or 5 whatever percentage it is, right? You take out a credit card. If you borrow money on a credit card and you don't pay it back, you're paying X percentage. So if you're close to the central bank, if you're a friend of Jamie Dimon, Jerome Powell, Janet Yellen, et cetera, if you're a friend of Bill Gates and et cetera, then you get infinite free money. If you're Elon, you get infinite free money and you stick it in you buy back your own Tesla stock and then you take that bonuses and the falsely inflated. So corporations with a new subprime corporations replace the subprime housing, right? So Elon gets a $50 billion or whatever, billions and billions. It's like, I forget it's like 100 billion a month. I don't know what it is now, but at one point the U.S. Central Bank was printing like hundreds of billions of dollars a month and just showering it into all of the most people closest to the central neo-feudal capitalist imperial tower, right? So Elon would get $5 billion a month, buy back his own shares in his own stock, propping his stock price up, take that out as take that as a gain on his assets, and suddenly his wealth will go up. And it's basically like, so you'd be like, well, Silverspook, if like, imagine that you had a company, right? Imagine you had a company called, what's your name, right? Bob.com or Melissa.com or Melissa Corporation. Imagine that you had the kind of assets to start that and the proximity to whiteness and capital and empire to start one, right? And you could afford the lawyers and you had the proper LinkedIn, hair part so you can go to the fancy fucking parties in DC and Davos and get that close, right? If you're like Silverspook, you mean I could just get money for free and then put that into my company and then say my company is doing better, even though I don't have any employees? I could like fire half of Twitter employees and say that the company's doing. I could like make Teslas that set their passengers on fire and run over kids with broken AI speeding off at 200 miles per hour. I could make broken Cybertrucks and just like, or I could make broken Cyberpunk 2077 games that don't work for 10 years and then just take the money that I got for free and say that I have a company here and just like pay a handful of, like, lose employees, like just pay random people any amount of money I want, just pay my friends who don't know how to code $100,000 a year to hang out with me. I could just pay Keanu Reeves to come to the Poland branch of CD Projekt Red and hang out with me with the free money that I got because I have proximity to Elon Musk and to the Central Bank of the United States and just do what the fuck I want and buy a fucking a Nazi-made palace in Germany as a Polish far-righter who runs CD Projekt Red and be transphobic in my Nazi palace with the money that I got for free? You saying I could do that? And I'm like, yeah, you could do that. You could I could buy a private jet with the money that I got for fucking free. What is that even capitalism? I mean, that's why I made Neofeud, so that you can learn what that is. But yeah, long story short is, it doesn't matter. You can be incompetent. You can be a complete clown. And that's why you have clowns running the West, because, you have castes and classes of very good professional gaslighters called everyone who is a millionaire or a multi-hundred-thousandaire wannabe who has a LinkedIn profile, who has to show up in the office every day and gaslight and write the Washington Post articles, pretend like there's a university system that isn't complicit in settler colonialism and capitalism, and write a bunch of documents and legalese and bullshit and get on CNN and CNBC and go, Elon is a genius, right? And you make shitty movies like Iron Man and Avengers that give capitalists a free Photoshop photo op puff piece, right? Going, Elon is a genius, right? And so then you can be a complete fucking idiot, be the richest, most powerful, one of the richest, most powerful people in the West, like Bill Gates and Elon, and just be in charge of everything and be a complete fuck up. Like George W. Bush, he couldn't drive a car without crashing it. He couldn't drive a company or a car. Donald Trump also couldn't drive a university or a car or a steakhouse without crashing it. Literally. He even knew it. That's why he hired a woman who was a 100,000 millionaire because she, as somebody who is aspiring to neo-feudal levels of power, would be better, and also a woman would be 3 times better than any man because it's a patriarchy. And so, the slightly smart idiots who run the Western capitalist world are smart enough to know that they should try to hire at least a few competent people to manage their empire for them. And if not, they're very good at gaslighting and hiring cops to break the legs of their striking protesters. That's another way to maintain your power, is just to be a horrible person. So it's kakistocracy, ruled by the most powerful and the least qualified and the most malicious and also the most incompetent. But that's just the natural outcome of Western civilization, so-called civilization. So Terminus Machina is about, that's what happens when these people, it's like Deus Ex, but like more realistic. Like the United States, it's not like, the Deus Ex is a cyberpunk game where shadowy, clandestine groups of people are very competently managing the world. They're Illuminati, right? It's all the conspiracy theories the West has produced for the last 20. It's all the CIA propaganda that they try to distract people from the fact that they're blowing up Vietnam and Iraq and trying to make proxy war in Russia and China by distracting people with Roswell aliens and Men in Black and shit like this, right? Not that they don't have shadowy organizations in DC, but Deus Ex, the shadowy organizations are not as competent as they claim to be. Certainly not now. And I know that because I was too proximal to many of them, and I work for 3 separate billionaires on top of that. The average billionaire is more mediocre. There's a movie being made about one of my bosses. In fact, he's the owner of Tetris, and he's going to be a really cool spy thriller, really cool James Bond character in this movie. His story is very interesting, but this guy is not any more competent than anyone else, I don't think, and he's mediocre in a lot of ways, And I don't want to say his name out loud because he's still in Hawaii and he has huge quantities of power. Neofeud is in fact inspired by this guy, but anyways, they're not really special, and Elon is definitely not special. He's in fact, Elon is one of the 54% of people, right, in the United States, adults, that can't read at a 6th grade level. You couldn't figure out that there is not going to be, you couldn't read NASA.com to figure out that it will take 5 billion years for our nearest star to turn into a red giant. So he can't read. Elon is an average or below average American, and probably below, because the average American could run Twitter better than him. You know what I'm saying? So that's Terminus Machina. It's about, this is a game where you play Silver Spook, a socialist hacktivist revolutionary trying to jailbreak iPhone 9 factory worker slaves in a collapsing San Francisco necropolis with automated police, military, fascism everywhere in the open, massacring black and brown, Black Lives Matter, and indigenous socialists and communists are just being rounded up. And all of the tech bros and programmers are all being paid off. The top 10 competent people left in the world that haven't been automated away. 90% of the population, doctors, lawyers, nurses, are all thrown out of their jobs because of AI in this game. And the ones who have a job, the top programmers and AI specialists, all work for the empire and program the drones that kill everyone else and mass enslave and round up the communists and left. The the AI powered robot police that round up based on your GPS coordinates and your Facebook profile, all of the left, and then put you inside of a fucking iPhone making camp or a robot making camp to make more fascist robots to kill more of you. So Terminus Machina is a very dark game. And it also deals with the collapse of the financial system, like I was talking about. That's what that stock ticker is about. Drone. There are drone strikes, and you can get drones stricken to death in Terminus Machina. So if you wanna get drone stricken by, if you wanna be an American citizen, getting yourself blown up Bolivia style, you know what I'm saying, or Iraq style, you know, you just get shot, you get drone stricken, you get tomahawk missiled, right? America is playing patty cake right now, still. You know, they don't just come out and just murder you like in their South and Central American and Middle Eastern, the 56th, 57th, and 58th states of the United States. You know, South Central America, Africa, and Middle East. They have America shows who it is. In America, they play patty cake still. You know, America is not just shooting you in the street. You should really thank your lucky stars and organize as fast as you possibly can, because they're not playing the way they actually. America is the global base of fascism. That's why Ukraine, the number one fascist country in the world, that has the only other one that voted with the United States against a UN motion against xenophobia, racism, and Nazism, right? The US has all the Nazis. They are the Nazi country of the world. You just don't know it yet, right? But you should really get ready for when the United States does to you in the United States and Canada what it actually does to everyone else, which is let the Sig Heilers loose. And they're getting ready for that. You know, that's why they have people with Nazi flags in the streets. You know, that's why they have people. Where's that one video? I just had that little video. Nazis are operating in public in the United States, as I said. Let me just get that little video here. So, you know, this is quietly just happening. Nobody's talking about this. Everything you know about this country is summed up, you know. So these are the swastikas that are just flying, and nobody's doing anything about this in Florida, by the way. This is DeSantis. He loves Nazis. He's just very open about it, you know. This group, the large upticks in recruitment from the drag stuff. The group formed a handful of people going out to protest drag shows. It's not uncommon to show up with 20 dudes now. We're like regular working class white people are racially aware, and we're not, so we're Nazis, right? And so this stuff is like, we feel like it's a good way to relate to normal people. So they just put swastikas all over the walls. No, this is not even the one I wanted to show. This is an older one. Oh, look, this guy has an Azov battalion. This guy has the Ukrainian insignia. He has like Azov battalion symbols. They're the Ukrainian Nazis, right? So everybody's like, you know, again, people who put the blue and yellow flag, you think that the fascism is only going to happen there and then it's not going to come home. No, Ukraine, it pushes a lot of the 4chan and the online and offline, but certainly the online, because they're in Ukraine. The far right is coming out of the multi-million fascists that have been in and have always operated Ukraine with the United States backing. Liberal, like Jewish liberal so-called progressives throwing, you know, Ben Stiller over there cheerleading on Zelensky, and he's got all the Nazis that are coming back for all your Jewish families, you know. But this is the level of diseducation that a lot of people, unfortunately, don't have. Let me see if I can find that. Where's that? Shit, I had that one that has like the actual Nazis in this United States. Fuck, I lost it. There is a video of them marching in the street with swastikas, and then people with Sig Heiling and the people with swastikas threatening the drag pro, you know, LGBTQ plus people in the streets, and the police are just watching it. And at one point, the police have to stop the ultra far right Sig Heiling Nazis from beating up the Proud Boys, right? And then the Proud Boys are like, hey, wait, you know, don't. We all work together, and the police are like nodding to the Proud Boys and nodding to the Nazis, right? Who are just marching in the street. And they're like, wait, we don't need infighting now. I know we all work together, right? The police are like talking to the Proud Boys, yeah, we work with you, and the police are talking to the Nazis, yeah, we work with you, but let's not fight right now, because the Nazis were like, why aren't you Proud Boys? You should be put your swastika on. The Nazis in I forget, was it Tennessee or Florida, were like, put a swastika on. Don't be a coward. Put the swastika on and do the Hitler salute, right? And the Proud Boys are like, wait, we're trying to maintain a little bit of cover for it, right? And then there's back and forth, and there's almost a fight. And the police had to get in the middle. But the police, the alt-right fascists and the Proud Boys are all on the same side, though, right? And importantly, what's important is that the United States has sorry, I'm trying to find it, and I'm not gonna be able to find it right now, but you can go look it up, I'm sure. The police, the United States is allowing swastikas and Nazis to march down the streets. And again, this should be put on the entire United States. This is not DeSantis. No, the United States, if it cared, the federal government, the national government, Biden administration, the Democrats, if they cared, what they don't, but if they did, they could get in there and stop it with the United States military and National Guard, etc. Right? But the United States government, Democrats and liberals, don't care. They love Nazis. Justin Trudeau, the liberal Canadian head, is constantly hanging out with literal swastika wearers and just trying to get them to stop Sig Heiling when he's taking pictures in Ukraine from like 10 years ago, back when Victoria Nuland was enacting the coup. So the reality is all these people who talk about, we're going to stop fascism and we'll never have a fascism here. All these people are like, we're going to stop Trump. They don't care. They love Trump. Trump got lots of billions of dollars of money thrown at Democrats. They love Trump. They love DeSantis because they're all fucking fascists. They're just very good at hiding it. Anyone who has $1 million or more net worth in the United States is backing fascism and planetary imperial genocide and war crimes. They just don't want to talk about it, or they try to ignore it or they don't talk about it. But now is the time in which what should have been obvious will be becoming more obvious, which is that the United States is a fascist country and all of its friends are fascist countries. And the people who, the funny thing is, it's Zelensky is himself. He is Jewish, but Jewish people. Barack Obama is a black guy who bombed more brown and black people than any president before him with drones. And Zelensky is a guy who got lots of Jewish people murdered by Nazis, and Kolomoisky as well. Bernanke himself is also going to get a lot of his own people murdered by the fascists that are roving the streets, backed by administrations that he has supported. Janet Yellen is also Jewish, and she's going to get and has supported fascists in Ukraine with her own actions, and in Africa and in South America. She was just in Africa. So being Jewish that's a perfect cover. Again, that's the best cover to pretend like there's no Nazis, is to put a Jewish. That's why they've chosen a Jewish actor who sold out his own people, Zelensky, to be in charge of Ukraine. They hand selected a comedian Jewish actor because, right? That's what I said. The only thing that. What is the purpose of Western existence? There's no jobs that are not airbrushing war crimes with a suit. Sometimes he has a tight shirt, not a suit. Sometimes he has like a muscle shirt, so it looks like he's actually fighting war in the trenches. No, he's too busy taking money from America, trying to get his $165 million like Ghani in Afghanistan so he can retire to Florida and hang out with DeSantis, right? And sacrifice Jewish people who were get holocausted by the Nazis that he supported, Zelensky, and America, and all of the Jewish Americans that go along with that are also killing their own people, committing their own holocausts. So, like there are Hawaiians who become in power. The person who was ripping down Hawaiian heiau and hale and Hawaiian places of prayer in the middle of our actual sacred dances wasn't a native Hawaiian, because it looks really good, right? Hawaii can go, look, we have Hawaiians in high places, and then that Hawaiian is actually just a Wendigo who sold his own people down the river and is killing Hawaiians, right? Cops go in the street and kill other Hawaiians, right? The Hawaiians sign up for the U.S. military and go kill brown people all over the world, right? So if you really want a solid empire, bring the most. Find the people who have, for whatever reason, been so broken or so fucked up of the marginalized, colonized people to put to the top to maintain a semblance of validity and morality to your empire, right? And that is very important, right? That's why they didn't like Trump, because it was good for fundraising, but it didn't look good. And America lost a lot of credibility. And when Trump comes back, America will lose more credibility. When Trump and or DeSantis come back, the United States will lose more credibility when it goes into a civil war with literal goose-stepping Nazis marching down the street, just like the U.S. uses in Ukraine and in Bolivia, Argentina, Colombia. I mean, a lot of the global South is looking at the United States and going, you finally are going to realize who you are. When your own fascists march in your own streets the way that they have marched in our streets, when your fucking three stripes, when your own you Sig Heilers are out there fucking shooting you, not with rubber, but not the cops, or the cops and the Nazis together doing what they do around the world, right? When all of the Bolsonaros and all of the Bolsonaros and all the fascists that leave their country and go to Florida so that they can get themselves reinstated with a murder squad of fascists, right? And now you will have your own murder squads in the United States. So So anyway, but I'm not just saying that to uh, that is what is happening, and that's also why like I said, when you put that American flag on, you putting a swastika up, and now it's kind of in a certain way it'll be more clear, because America has goose stepping Nazis, and then no party is doing anything about it. So now it'll be really clear who is the fascist country. So now if you go, well, American has some hope in it, where is it, right? If you say you're a patriot socialist, right? We're gonna have American socialism. We're gonna unite behind the American flag. When the American flag gets replaced with a swastika, what are you gonna unite behind then, right? There's a lot of people actually doing mental gymnastics. They're going, well, the Nazis were actually the left, and the swastika doesn't really mean fascism. And then like just like in Ukraine, there's people who said that. Well, the liberals, right? At New York Times going, well, when the Ukrainian wave the Stepan Bandera insignias, and they have these statues of this Hitler's best friend in Ukraine, and when they have the Azov, they don't really mean, they love their country. That's all it is, right? And then the fascists like, no, we want to get rid of everybody who is not a white, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, real Ukrainian. We want to exterminate Russians, right? And then and Ben Stiller's over there going, oh, it's not. That's let me accept an Academy Award on behalf of Zelensky. It's not really, fascism is, what does it mean? What are words? I don't know. And the fascists like, no. In fact, because you're saying that, I'm gonna come kill you. Anyways, so, but that is interminus machina as well. They call themselves the Washingtonians, and they're like they march through the streets and they kill black and brown people. Interminus machina. Before 2008 housing crash, well, because they're taking their food, and these minorities are coming for their jobs and their money, and it's very justified, right? Just like the Russians were coming for the real Ukrainians' money and their jobs, right? Just like the Mexicans and the Muslims were coming, right? As Donald Trump and all of the Republicans say, for American jobs, and they're going to turn your children into boys into girls and all this stuff, right? So fascism will be justified, right? It will be justified, and a lot of Americans will, unfortunately, sadly, are selecting the wrong side. But you shouldn't. You should choose the right side. Before 2008 housing crash, the banking system was fine. Now the banking system is fine. So this is very important. Just back on the back on the banking thing. Ben Bernanke, who was, as I said, the chairman of the Federal Reserve in the noughties, right? The Federal Reserve chairman is a person who makes decisions like how much money will be printed and how much will we. What will the interest rate be? What will the price of money be? Is another thing that it basically is how much and how fast, how easy will it be for money to be printed and then pushed out into the economy, right? And where is it going to go? There's a lot of BS when it comes to economics, just in general, and also when it comes to the Federal Reserve, and when it comes to interest rates and that kind of stuff. The Federal Reserve doesn't care about your economy. It doesn't care about jobs. It doesn't care about anything. This is all lies. The Federal Reserve is a arm of the U.S. empire, which runs, as I said, for the minority of war criminals and psychopaths, right, of D.C., Silicon Valley, and Wall Street. Now, they talk about interest rates are cut when employment numbers are not good to stimulate the economy. They don't care. If interest rates are cut so that they can stick tons of money in Elon and billionaires and all their friends' pockets, and then pretend like there's something happening, like a housing market, and things are getting better. And then the chairman of the Federal Reserve gets a job at the Treasury, and then they move on. And I don't know, whatever Ben Bernanke thinks in his empty little fucking head, along with Janet Yellen, is immaterial. Janet Yellen is also a classmate of Richard Wolff, which is the preeminent Marxist economist in the United States, right? But a lot of times I think that economists just, most of what they learn is bogus. That's what Michael Hudson accurately says, which is it's science fiction, literally disconnected from reality. But some combination of completely idiotic, out to lunch, naive, smarmy faced dickheads is what people who get these kind of jobs, useful tools, right, and malicious, terrible people is some combination of those two. Who doesn't really matter. Kakistocracy doesn't matter. Is Ben Bernanke knowingly causing multi-trillion-dollar collapse and people to become homeless by the million in the 2008-09 crisis? Did he do that on purpose, or did he do that because he's the fucking idiot who took hook, line, and sinker Harvard, Princeton, and Yale so-called educations, right, in economics, right? Does he believe in mean value theory and portfolio theory? Does it believe in the great moderation that he wrote an entire paper about, literally a white paper about how there will never be any more volatility or bubbles, housing, tech, or otherwise, for the rest of the future? It's kind of like the end of history. Not Fukushima. That's the radioactive sushi that Japan's serving as they get destroyed, being pushed to make proxy war on China. But Francis Fukuyama's end of history. Oh, and now the United States liberal Western capitalism has won and it will forever reign. And that's bullshit, right? America's gone. Bernanke wrote a similar paper called The Great Moderation. Forever, there will never be stock market bubbles, housing bubbles. We have solved with our technocratic financial genius in the noughties with, me and all of my New York and Harvard and Yale friends. We've all solved, we and all the Wall Street bankers, these real smart quants and geniuses, we've all solved the problems of instability in capitalism. They wrote an entire fucking paper about this, right? And it was really nice if you want to make a lot of money on Wall Street and think you're a good guy, right? You can do good, you can do well for yourself and be good, and social entrepreneurship. This is like the predated that 20 teens bullshit, but you can make a lot of money and there will never be any more collapses that will hurt millions of people and cause mass unemployment and damage to the economy. Everything's fine. Keep calm and drink from this giant punch bowl of free, 0% interest rate, quantitative easing, infinity money that I'm going to print and stick in your fucking pocket if you're a wealthy, landed, cis white man descendant like Elon. So he wrote that, and then of course it was false. And so I bring this up because right before this explosion happened, when the top levels of the financial Western hegemon runner, especially like the United States, when the United States superpowers financial managers, right, like the head of the Federal Reserve, like the Treasury Secretary, come out and they say things like, there is no bubble, everything is fine and chill, just keep shopping and keep taking out mortgages, take your 401k and stick it in the stock market, take all the money you have and just bet it on the stock market, reverse mortgage your house and go to Vegas, do whatever you want to do because everything's fine, everybody. And then, year 2 years later, everything explodes and everyone loses their entire fucking shirt, including my family. So Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen just said this week, right? This was actually today in Hawaii. This is today, March 12th. Janet Yellen came out to say the banking system is safe. Everything is fine. There are no problems, right? So now they don't always come out and say these things. They only come out and say these. Well, they come out and say them, but they really come out and say them strongly across the board when there is extreme problems, because the job of Westerners is to do what, right? Is to professionally lie for money. That's the only job that is available, is to lie in the newspapers, lie as teachers about how good the United States is when it isn't, and to lie about how structurally sound the United States financial system is when it isn't. That's the only job that is gainful employment. That's all they do in New York Times and BBC is just put out war propaganda projecting Western crimes onto China, and onto Russia. And so when the head of the Western financial system comes out and says, everything's fine, keep your money in the bank. I don't give you financial advice. I'm not here. I am not an accredited. I do not have a Standard & Poor's or Moody's rating. I am not a professional, or even semi-professional, retirement or stock portfolio advisor. I'm just saying, when they say that, that is not good news for your financial system. That means that they're trying to keep the remaining duct tape on the dying house of cards. As I said, the United States, it's not just the big tech. It's not just Silicon Valley banks. It's not just Elon, Dogecoins and NFTs and bogus, failed startups that failed faster and failed more fraudulently, and made a bunch of rich white bros in Silicon Valley a bunch of money after blowing up. It's not just big tech. The entire U.S. economy is a complete hollowed out house of cards that was bankrupt in 2008, put on zombie life support, and is 100 times as bankrupt now. So all of the banks, again, as I said, right, they were propped up in 08, 09. The two bigs to fail were called too big to fail. They should have all failed, and they should have been nationalized, right? Like the rail should be nationalized. People say this shit. It's what they're saying. It's like, yeah, if this was a Hawaii in the 1800s, if this was Cuba, Bolivia, China, or Vietnam, Venezuela, these banks would have been nationalized, and all those people at the top would have been gone. They've been fired. They've been, serving shave ice or frozen chocolate covered bananas or some shit, running a popsicle stand. They would not be running anything. They'd be like Jeanine Añez, making textiles and making patterns of clothes and being a actually productive member of society, unlike anyone, right, who runs any companies in the West that are all capitalist, gaslighting, psychopath farms. So literally, you're 10 times more likely to be a sociopath or psychopath if you get a job on Wall Street. Like CEOs are the probability of being psychopathic, incapable of empathy is far higher for, due to some kind of traumatic brain injuries or confluences of their neurochemistry from birth. The capacity to have empathy is very low. So those people should not be running anything. But the Western world tends to put those people in charge. You see how fucked up that, part of it is not that people are bad. It's just that the West takes the worst people in the universe and puts them in charge because everyone is being a selfish, stuck-up psycho. Those are the sought after job qualifications. That's the real magna cum laude they're looking for. Are you fucking evil? And then they put you in charge. It's called capitalism. It's called imperialism. Anyway, so all of those banks they're still there. There are now, the thing is, the United States is, as I said, in the 1920s, when there was that financial collapse after the Roaring '20s, that was different from 0809. And 0809 is different from now. China and Russia and the multipolar world is far more advanced than it was then. The United States empire is 13, 15 years deeper into its terminal decline. The Western world, the colonial world, the Euro 500-year colonial capitalist horror show when they dominated this planet. The white Icemen dominated the earth, right? That period is rapidly closing. It's in a far different position than it was in 0809. China was still smaller economy, even in purchasing power terms. Putin had just gave that speech and said, I don't think we don't want to be subjected to your imperial hegemony. He just gave that speech, and then the financial system started to collapse. They were not at the point of where they are building the BRICS was starting to being talked about, but it was not nowhere near. There's an entire international economic, military, non-Western, non-colonial, win-win cooperative models and interconnected multipolar reality. The BRICS, Asia, Latin America, Pacific, and like I was talking about, right, Africa. Africa was still taking lectures, not that they wanted to, but they had no real strong method of getting out from under Western colonial abuse and exploitation. China was just starting to really start to partner more. In the last 15 years, that has just exploded. So all of the U.S. and the Europe could still rely on their colonies for this extraction of wealth. They still were above China, so they were not as worried about China at that time. Obama hadn't even started his pivot to Asia, which is about recognizing that they were going to be surpassed by China, and they were going to the Western liberal capitalist hegemony was going to be deeply challenged, and it is going to lose whether it wants to or not. And so when this bubble explodes, right, unlike the 0809 subprime global financial heist or the global subprime mortgage, no income, no jobs, no assets originated crisis. Not just that, but that's a major one. As I brought up the sovereign debt, this international financial shadow money there's $2 quadrillion in derivatives, right? Dark financial products. Don't research them unless you want to lose your mind, like staring into the eyes of Cthulhu. It's like, as I said, it's more eldritch than any Lovecraftian terror, and more racist than Lovecraft, because it's the United States. So at its highest levels. So what's gonna happen what's gonna happen tomorrow, right? The United States, they might be able to put something back together. They might be able to patch some holes, but over the nearer term, certainly the medium term and definitely longer term, and probably the nearer term, the United States is already on its last legs. It can't keep its goddamn trains up. It can't keep its employees from dying. It can't keep its one of the good news is at least NYPD cops are leaving because even they can't even pay their own cops enough, or I don't know what the fuck. Or I think part of it is because people hate cops so much. So I mean that's a positive sign, which is that like some people are recognizing, although it's mostly non-white people, but New York has a very large non-white population, also very important to remember that the United States is not, it's already in a cold civil war. It's been in one since Trump ordered the military. He cut the entire United States government in half, right? The FBI was attacking the president. The Supreme Court was attacking the executive branch the United States was balkanized, really. The governors of South Carolina and Virginia ordered their own militaries to hoard pandemic materials against the federal government. That's like literal. That is a chain of command break. DeSantis has his own armies in Florida. The United States is already soft balkanized. It's already soft in a cold civil war / shadow balkanized. People just don't realize it yet. So when this house of cards is not just 500 billion, we're talking about tens of trillions of dollars. There's a book by Naomi Prince, who was a former central banker, former Goldman Sachs executive, and then worked at the central banks, that talks about the entire rigging of the entire global financial system. She has multiple books, but it's one of the books that I was reading. But back when I was going to be I read the book and I'm like, oh my god, I don't want to be a part of Cthulhu. I'm not really a Lovecraft fan. I don't want to be part of the planetary fucking vampire squid. And but basically, tens of trillions of dollars have been printed and blasted into the entire definitely the Western and U.S. financial system, but really much more than that. And all of that money that is propping up all of these zombie corporations, all of the Boeings and the GMs that haven't made planes or cars, and definitely the Teslas, but even the mainstays of American, so whatever remains of American industrial actual production, the big techs, the FANG, Facebook, Googles, the GMs, the Boeings, they're not worth a fraction of what they say they are, because they have taken so much money and falsely, as I said, corporate buybacks inflated their own stock, right? As to make up the difference for the subprime. There's so much. The military-industrial complex is just like amuck with, like, they haven't met an audit ever, right? Money's just disappearing all over the place. Inflation, they can't get a handle on inflation. And but long story short, there's tens of trillions of dollars now. So the too big to fails are ultra, mega, uber, gargantuan, galactus too big to fucking fail, right? If things start to crack, the only thing the U.S. can do is kind of prop it up. But if they try to cut interest rates, right, what happens was Jerome Powell was raising interest rates. The current Federal Reserve is raising interest rates to level off some of the inflation, because prices of eggs was like going up 400% and shit, right? Prices of eggs and meat and food, and that's part of that is because of this mountains of money that's been printed, among other things, and part of that is greedy, selfish corporation runners and CEOs who want to make more money, so they raise prices. But also, a lot of money has been printed, and it's bleeding into other areas. I mean, it was already, most of the inflation was going into housing and healthcare and education costs. That's all inflation. They don't count it because there's no legitimacy in the Western anything, and certainly not in their economic analysis. But now it's not just housing and housing costs and healthcare costs and education costs that have been exploding so unsustainably. When food costs go up, then people really feel it and really start to notice, and they're trying to get a handle on that one. With the rising interest rates, that's not going to work, because when you raise interest rates, right, it's just imagine that you are, right, let's come back to you have a $3,000 mortgage, or let's say you're a broke ass Gen Z because like I can't afford a fucking $200 heating bill. What the fuck are you talking about? $1,500 mortgage. Okay, let's say you have a $800 rent or mortgage, right? Now let's say that your interest rate goes up suddenly, or it kicks up. Okay, well now, because of this adjustment, instead of $800, now you owe $1,200 a month, right? So suddenly the company that could break even, right, the Silicon Valley Bank backed, Kitty Dogecoin.com or whatever, right? That company that was just breaking even is suddenly, when it's daily, it's making, I don't know, 800,000 or 8 million a month. Now when it goes to 12 million a month, it has to pay back or something, right? Oh shit, we can't make that. So when the interest rate rises, all the payments rise, and it's a domino contagion effect. That's what we're talking about, contagion. So all of the other co-investments and this mass, kudzu vine planetary entanglement that all the financial entities have with each other, suddenly you have this domino effect that starts to radiate outwards. And so if one of these banks fail, all their liabilities get called in and go, well, actually, I want my money from that other co-investment they have in, I don't know, Bank of America or JP Morgan, right? And people start, and then there's a psychological factor. Oh my God, wait, if it's going, I don't want to lose my entire life savings like I did in 0809 again. Oh shit. And then everybody starts. So the contagion effect is psychologically, and that's why, and fuck the United States. I mean, the entire financial system is full of it's a giant parasitic clusterfuck. So they all should explode. And so they deserve all the contagion that they cause. Somebody goes, "Oh, this is because a few crypto bros, just outed each other as having embezzled some money, and they caused their own collapse because everyone pulled their money out simultaneously." Well, I mean, none of these people deserve to have any money to put anywhere. So fuck all of them. This whole thing is like, oh, we should feel bad for the Silicon Valley Bank. Oh, the mom and pop investors. Oh, the mom and pop millionaire shitheads who got 0% interest fucking free money to stick inside of fucking Facebook 2.0. Fuck these people. I mean, if it's somebody who actually like if you're like actually, building a cooperative non-capitalist business, you can't get loans like Cyberspook Games. Cyberspook Games has been in operation for 6 years and we never took a single fucking loan because we won't ever qualify for a loan probably because capitalist entities which run the entire financial system of the Western world, which is occupying Hawaii, will never give they never give indigenous people money ever if they can get away with it. And they sure as fucking going to give a non-capitalist cooperative that is trying to build a non-capitalist world money that they can't make profit from because it's not a capitalist fucking entity. So fuck the entire Western financial system. All of the businesses that need to fail should have failed 20 fucking years ago. In fact, the United States should have failed when a bunch of racist genociders landed on Plymouth Rock. They should have failed then. But, granted they succeeded past 1600s. They should have failed in 2008. Now it's 2020 fucking 3, and they can if they don't fail now, they're going to fail later. The longer they're alive, the more parasitic lifeblood they will suck out of the real economy and all the human beings that could be building a better fucking sustainable future like Cuba and Hawaii. Cuba has now, Hawaii had then, and lots of other countries are building. So the faster the U.S.-led financial hegemony explodes, the better. It should all die. Asia, China, and Russia and the BRICS, they will hold together at this point. It's the parasites at the top of the West that have the most to fear at this point. In 0809 is a little more iffy, but now Europe and the US have all sanctioned the shit. All the Western countries that cut Russia off from everything. They took the billions of dollars right out of Russia's account. Right? They're sanctioning the shit out of Russia, and the rest of Russia, which leads with China, the rest of the majority of the planet, do not require the United States. What does the United States give other than drones and bombs and toxic fucking jet fuel and water? What the fuck do they give? And exploitation. What has Europe ever brought to the table for the last 500 fucking years? Nothing. If the U.S. and Europe died, the world will be a happier place. When the United States and Europe collapse in the shitscape, fascist, capitalist, dickhead, greater attractor of the planet that they are, and the dickheads get all of their, I'm not gonna say in a video game heads might roll, but I'm just saying when they collapse and they can't maintain their imperial and colonial tentacles, the rest of the world will stop getting sucked. It's like in Moana. It's like that black tentacle stretching across the entire ocean, eating everything. That's the West. And so that would be really awesome for Hawaii, in fact. So Silicon Valley Bank, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Wells Fargo, the entire Western capitalist banking institutions, all the major banks, you can all go die in a fire. Everyone should pull all their money out. In fact, take all your money and put it directly into, in the land, into getting real estate. Buy real estate, give it back to indigenous people. Just like that guy who has had a job at Twitter, who's been being paid $3,000 a week nonstop for the last several months, and is just buying indigenous land and giving it to indigenous people for free with the money, because Elon can't even fucking figure out who works at his goddamn company, because that's the level of competence. That's who runs the West. They never deserve to run anything. The West, the presidents of the United States, Germany, Brussels, and all of their corporate heads, and all of their millionaires should run. They can all run popsicle stands. They can all do penance by planting fucking trees and learning from black and indigenous people with 4 hours of their daily free time. That's what every Westerner can fucking do for the foreseeable centuries. That's what you all can fucking do, because you fucked this entire planet up. All your financial institutions can now go die in a fucking fire that you caused, called your zombie financial systems and your zombie economies that have eaten this planet for 2,000 years. Fuck you. So, that's my Silver Spook speech for the day. It's 8:52. Anyways, that's as good a place as anywhere. So if you want to check out a game that's like, what the fuck was he talking about? Terminus Machina is one of the games that is specifically, it is where Silver Spook games, the character Silver Spook comes from. Silver Spook, the character is a socialist, hacktivist, homeless, revolutionary, working with Black Lives Matter and indigenous left to stop, automated capitalist fascism from destroying a much more descended United States. So if you want to learn about that, you can play Terminus Machina. And of course, Neofeud is the follow-up game to that. That's more of a satirical comedic game, but it is also a Silver Spook game that is about all the topics I've been discussing, but with more cyberpunk, dystopian, characteristics, and more comedy involved. Although I guess this was a comedy stand-up routine as well. So I think I'm much funnier than basically any right-wing or most centrist and liberal, and even a lot of progressives. Although most comedians in America are, Joe Rogan or Dave Chappelle or Wright. So, but I think this was funnier than them. So they can all suck on it. Also, you can watch the Neofeud trailer as I finish this up. And this is I'll be right back after this.
The Illuminati created us. They wanted to build a god with their own hands, and instead they created us.
Just because I'm made of silicone and aluminium, I must be doing something wrong. That's machine stereotyping, that is.
That's reality, that is. Machines are second-class citizens.
Humans are sentient persons by default, ma'am. They have personhood by heredity.
There are thousands upon thousands of overqualified slum dwellers. You are my peon. Don't you get it?
This wasn't a job. It was always just an excommunication sentence.
We're pawns in a feud bigger than we can imagine. Turn the cogs of the machine before Leviathan grinds you up and swallows you and yours.
We don't get to choose our hand, comrade. Prince, peon, rich, poor, human, robot.
I invented the crux of the royal's power, the secret to consciousness, our existence itself, the meaning of life.
I'm the $6 billion baller, not some troubled youth.
You are my greatest creation of all.
I had to build my own family. I ain't your son. I ain't your son.
I'm happy to smash all of the crowns and throw the gold shards down to the people. I will be the iconoclast queen.
But who makes you queen anyway? You? You and whose army, princess? You and whose army?
Anyways, so I know I have said a lot of words this stream, and yeah, so I hope you have found that somewhat educational, if not edutaining. And if you have, consider grabbing Neofeud to support us. You can also give direct support through the Ko-Fi or the Patreon. Consider like, how much is this stream worth to you? $2 or $3 or $5, and any amount helps to support us in that way. You can grab Neofeud on itch.io if you're into those kinds of games. And you can also just subscribe if you don't wanna find your Ko-Fi and stuff. You can also get Neofeud on Steam for Windows, Mac, and Linux. It is a game that is very much deals with a lot of the topics that I've been talking about as I said, in a cyberpunk point-and-click adventure game. It is 100%, as I said, if the Western financial system collapses, Silver Spook Games will not be in the red. We're not going to go bankrupt because of that. I mean, we could have other problems, but we don't have any debts. Certainly not to these entities. So, fuck all those entities. Yeah. So. So Silver Spoon Games is supported by the sales of the games as well as the Patreon support. So yeah, you can get access to the Silver Spoon Discord, Silver Spoon University, which is over 1,000 hours of Silver Spoon content and Silver Spoon threads categorized approximately by economics, politics, centering race, talking about Hawaiian history specifically, and other topics. If you would like access to that, as well as behind the scenes updates on Neofeud, you can become a Silver Spook Patreon patron and help us out at the Silver Spook Indigenous Left Run Cooperative here on the illegally occupied country of Hawaii. And you can also follow at Silver Spook Games at octanon.social, where you can also, like, just to, so I am a non-binary person, and I was dressed in a different presentation yesterday, and that's the thing that I do on a regular basis. So if you want to see more awesome pics of me, it's not just on Mastodon, but also you can find me on at Silver Spoon Games at Silver Spoon Games at octanon.social, at Silver Spoon Games at Mastodon.social. As well, you can find on Instagram and Facebook and on Twitter, Silver Spoon Guy. Of course, that's what I was showing for a lot of this stream, where I post my personal takes and thoughts. As well, you can find the games at Silver Spook Games, minus the E in silver, for the games related stuff. Because actually, what I do most of my day, after refusing the Goldman Sachs high frequency trading algorithm programmer job, I said I'm gonna make video games instead that are like based left, anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist games. I'm gonna make anti-Goldman Sachs games. That's all I'm gonna do for my day. I'm like, fuck these people, man. Goddamn. And so, if you want to learn more about the games that I make at Silver Spook Games, as well, you can follow Terminus Cyberstar. Terminus Cyberstar is the sequel to Terminus Machina. That is a standalone game. I'm the content director and lead writer of it, and it is a game that is nearly completed, and it has lots of cyberpunk and RPG and immersive sim aspects to it. It's like, as I said, Deus Ex and System Shock style of game. You can follow at Terminus C, join their Discord there. You can also follow Holly. Holly also is at the Tech Fairy. Holly is a writer, poet, educator, mod, married to myself here at the Silver Spoon Cooperative, producer and manager with Kate Nix, the Chaotic Cabaret for the Goblin and You, a Twitch-streamed variety show. And Holly also is a parent and caregiver here at the Silver Spoon Cooperative and tweets important things like that. And yes. Yeah. And thank you to all the people on this list right here for your continued support. It is hugely appreciated. As always, without your Patreon support, it does become very difficult for us to keep doing these streams and finishing Neofeud 2. I am working really hard. I worked even on Sunday. I'm working on Neofeud 2 today. Trying to really get that thing done. Just trying to hammer that sucker out. So yeah, but I am still working on Neofeud 2, and all the support helps me finish that game as well. And so this says it's Kamakani. Okay, yeah, it's Kamakani is, I think, another native Hawaiian streamer, so that's cool. Thanks a lot, Monogatate. I saw Holly. You asked about Terminus Machina. Yeah, it is a mod for Deus Ex, the first Deus Ex. So if you have that, you can install Terminus Machina as a mod for that. So yes, and now we will raid into it's Kamakani. I think that's, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that is the win. Kamakani, is that the win, or I might be mistaken. Okay. It's a Hawaiian word, I believe, for the win. But anyways, keep it very safe, boss. Be excellent to each other. Never become a Goldman Sachs high frequency trading algorithm program. Never make fraudulent loans. Take your money out of all the Western banks that you can manage to. Get them out, because they're all going to collapse and they're going to steal your money right out of your account soon. If you don't have it out, look at Cyprus in the 20 teens as one example. Any money that's in the stock market is money you ready to lose. And anything in the 401k, you're ready to lose it. So anyway, in the video game, it's not stock advice, but join It's Kamakani and have a good time in their stream.
I'm not even someone who's like fully active on TikTok. I should totally get back and I should do like TikTok and stuff. Oh my gosh. Hold on. Oh my gosh. Silver Spook, mahalo for the raid. Aloha nui. Mahalo nui yaoko. Thank you so much for the raid, Silver Spook. Mahalo. How was your stream? Y'all, if you are not following Silver Spook, please go give them a follow. I tuned in on your stream for the first time last night, Silver Spook, and I was fully like snapping off last night at the things that you were talking about. Amazing, amazing content and just political education and everything. Y'all, if you are not following Silver Spook, please go give them a follow. Aloha mai kako, ova o kamakani mai kalani. I'm Kamakani. I use they them pronouns. I am a Mahu True Spirit Kanaka Maoli, poet, protector, and anti-colonial abolitionist. On this platform here on